All right. Hey, everybody. This is Lavia Ray, along with Ian Waffles and another friend of mine, Derpada. How are you guys
Hi.
doing today?
Good.
Doing great. Thanks for having me again. We're here to discuss our thoughts on Sonic Frontiers, and which is actually kind of interesting though, because most people know you love from like the comics and stuff, or like talking about the comics and things like that. Do most of the people who would know you know your history with the Sonic games themselves?
Uh, for the most part, they do. I ended up doing an interview with someone a little while ago talking to someone else about that, but we never really got a chance to upload it properly. So I'll go ahead and
Right.
describe.
So I guess what I just want to know is like we're talking about the game obviously. So what is your investment in Sonic as a gaming franchise?
Relatively so. So I've actually was introduced into the Sonic franchise through the TV show. So it was mainly through like Sonic Underground and Sonic X in particular. But as for the games, I ended up mostly coming in through like the portable games and then slowly moving into like the console games. So I ended up playing like Sonic Advance, the Sonic Advance series, Sonic Rush series, even Sonic Dark Brotherhood, and I ended up also yeah, and then I ended up shifting over into the console games like with Sonic Riders and Generations. But one of the first games I got to properly play on like the big screen instead of just on my television, that was a mainline game, was Sonic Forces. So that was fun. Yeah.
So basically, like,
Starting
but as far as your experience with Sonic as a franchise, were the games what made you invested in him, or were they just kind of like, oh, there's also Sonic games, but I'm more into like the fandom or like fan art and that kind of stuff?
I was into more of the fandom and the concept itself first, and especially through the TV shows, and then I coming over to the games as well.
So like the shows drew you in.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, go ahead.
What about you, Waffles?
Me. So I grew up with Sonic in the same way everyone does, which is I played Shadow the Hedgehog and shot people. So, you know, that was my introduction. And then I was like, man, who's the Sonic guy in the game? And I found out he had a bunch of games about him. So yeah, I just mostly got in through Shadow, and then I started playing the other games and really enjoying them. Then I found issue 4 of the Archie comics at like a local grocery store, and I got hooked on that. And then I also started watching Sonic Sat AM when it came out on DVD, along with my siblings. So I had a lot of different outlets, and of course, like I grew up when Sonic X was out at the time. So Sonic just kind of got ingrained into me by just growing up on the time when it was pretty much everywhere. You know, like Sonic. You'd had Sonic Heroes, but then also you'd have Sonic X on TV, and then there was handheld games, and so I would get those. So Sonic as a series was always something I connected to just because it's fun to go fast. And so I've just always looked forward to one of his games because I just like that thrill. And if they can do it in an interesting way, I'm always looking forward to it. So, but then, yeah, how about you, Derp? How'd you get into Sonic?
I got in through the cartoons at a young age. Later was given a PlayStation 2 with the Sonic Gems collection game, along with Sonic Heroes. And from there, just kind of played a few more additional games on the side. And during high school, I kind of dipped out. Got to conform to the mature standards.
Oh, of course.
It wasn't until later on when I heard all the buzz about Mania and Forces. Like, oh, okay, this seems cool. I'll jump on the hype train. Got Mania, really fun, and then I did not get Forces. I avoided that once I heard how people felt about it, and from there, I kind of nestled into the fandom. Ended up following a few people. Somehow went down this rabbit hole and ended up in this group chat. And it's been fun.
And now we've locked you in said room, and it is time to talk about Sonic Frontiers. Starting with, let's get the thing that I'm actually the most interested in, as far as what I think will be more different between all our opinions. The gameplay. We'll start with you, Love. What do you think of like the gameplay of the game? And that can include combat, cyberspace, the boss fights. Just what was the overall feel as you've been playing?
Okay, so throughout the entire gameplay, I will definitely start by saying this. I think this game's absolutely a step in the right direction for the entire franchise overall. I like the open world set. I do like the open world setting. I do, while it is technically considered an open open zone setting. At the end of the day, it's not just locked onto playing on particular tracks. It's meant to be way more open. So I was a big fan of being able to like actually be able to go fast and not have to worry too much about like different just be able to go wherever I wanted a lot more freely than it is in most games. On top of that, I have a decent feel about when it comes to the combat itself. Being able to execute a lot of the combos is a little tricky, but for the most part, it was relatively simple to kind of get a grasp on. But I ultimately ended up leaning towards hitting onto a couple of attacking styles rather than just trying to use the full kit.
Have you not unlocked the auto combo move?
Yeah, I ended up unlocking that, but I wasn't a big fan of it since it also kind of weakened the attacks as well. It's like I'd rather try to make sure I could take the full advantage of my attacks as possible. So I did get the auto unlock. I did get the auto combo feature, but I just never really got around to using it. I never really turned it on. So, but for the most part, I had a decent grasp on the gameplay itself. So how about you, Derp? How did you feel about the game mechanics on the whole?
I guess let's start with cyberspace. I don't know. Now, truth be told, I am not a fan of the boost formula, so I feel like no matter what game they'll be able to be like, I don't like this or that, blah blah blah. But I'll say that it's serviceable. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a fan of
the gameplay in general.
Oh, cyberspace. I'll comment about the open
Okay.
world in a moment. Yeah, I've always been a fan of an adventures playstyle, Sonic Heroes, so the boost formula is now very gelled well with me. I don't like how a lot of the zones. I don't like how all of the places are essentially reused assets from a decade-old game. Green
Absolutely.
Hill,
yeah,
Chemical Plant,
Speed
Highway, and
Sky Rail.
Sanctuary.
Yeah. Sky Sanctuary. Sky Rail is in the game for level design.
Exactly. Not just the assets, but even the level design itself is, I don't want to say copy pasted, but it's just completely rebuilt in these reused assets, and I don't like that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, rather just
no, go ahead.
I would just rather play the older games. Like, give me new stages. Come on.
Yeah, I mean that's if I can add on to that real quick, I would say that that was one of the big things that stuck out to me is like they kept saying like, oh, you're going through Sonic's memories, and they even have like a line in there where like Sonic's like, hey guys, maybe because they were like places I've been before, that's how I was able to escape. See, it's fine they're here. But it's very funny how like flimsy that is when the fact that Sonic never went to Skyrail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, that irks me on a personal level. And there are people like coping really hard to like defend that by saying like, "Well, Sonic and Tails flew over Skyrail, so he technically went there." And that's not just one of the copes. There's another cope that says like, but in 2-player mode of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, there's a Skyrail level. It's like, it's not canon. It's not canon. That's just a thing with a friend. It's not canon.
Well, and ultimately the big, all those things wouldn't be so bad, I think. Like the reused level design probably wouldn't be so bad if it just wasn't every level being these same 3 assets along with a unique city level, which I do enjoy those aesthetically. Mm-hmm. I like the way they went for it. But it's just kind of strange that they only chose the classic ones when it's like, if you're going to rip from Generations, at least give me more variety. So I don't know. That's definitely something that if they keep these types of stages going forward, just please give me something new to look at. Please.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, I'm not against reusing assets. I don't know if anyone in the audience will be able to relate because it's 2 different types of genres, but Call of Duty is very known for reusing assets, and in like the early games, they would just take entire chunks of the story mode levels and repurpose them for multiplayer and zombie maps. The thing is, they would always change them in ways to make them new and work for those separate modes, be it like sidelines and like sightlines and window barriers, all this stuff, just to make them fit in the mode. Mm-hmm. But the thing with Sonic, is that for the last decade, we've been using the same places. And I just want to see, I would rather see a different place in a 3D environment. I would rather see the Angel Island jungles in a 3D environment. I would rather see what a modern, I don't know, what is it called, the Planet Freedom place in CD. I'd rather see one of those places in a 3D environment. But it's always the same few places, and I don't like that. It's gotten so stale and old that I just kind of groan.
And the thing is, and I completely agree with you, and I would be more willing to give Green Hill in particular a pass if they were trying to set that up as like, hey, this is like Sonic's home base, and like this is where they like generally tend to like live and sleep and this kind of stuff, and leave everything while they end up going out on adventures, and this is just a starting point. But they just recycle Green Hill over and over and over again in randomly different ways, more just to have brand consistency than anything else.
It's gotten to the point where they're actively like portraying continuity, where Green Hill is part of South Island, but in Forces, it's part of the mainland now. Like what?
It's just So I think overall, as far as like, if I can tie my thoughts of cyberspace in with yours, it's just that like I think overall they feel like they're pandering in like the most obvious way possible of like, boost, don't worry, it's still in the game, and also, do you like the classics? See, it's the classic stages from that other boost game that had the classic stages in. So it just doesn't come across well.
Right.
Yeah, there's a few Unleashed levels in there as well. It's not just adventure levels that have been brought back.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, they probably could have cut that out entirely. Like, yeah, it ties in a little bit with the mechanics, like when it comes again like the Emerald Keys, but that could have just been tied in with like the platforming that you already end up doing in the overworld in the first place. And
I would love to see an environment in the open world built into the grounds. Like, just recently, Splash Dash made like this post on Twitter, and it's LS Mark, if you know him as that.
Yeah.
And he showed off like this little pet place in the final 5th area where you can actually run across like the ceiling. So technically there's like coding in the game that works where you could do a hypothetical loop to run around just in the open environment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we don't have like a natural loop in like the actual open worlds. It's always the Mario Maker-esque floating zone blocks, you know?
Yeah.
No, I get you. But then, what did you think of the open zone, though?
I thought they were fine. I recently started playing Arceus, and it kind of gives me like vibes of those, where it's like I can see what they're doing here, and it kind of works. But I feel like this needs to be more refined and polished. And if they do another game like this, they can really do something great with it. But as it is, like the open world places, they just feel kind of meh.
All right, so what in particular do you feel needed to be refined when it comes to the open world in this game?
I'm not sure. Maybe like something to differentiate them on a gameplay level rather than just aesthetically. Because I'm going to leave this game with a very little opinion of each individual zone. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to think of them all as one, besides the Chaos Island for negative reasons. But as a whole, they just kind of feel very samey. Like, I'd rather one have more hazards of, like, water or something, where you have to, like, avoid maybe falling at places, or you got to, like, get out of a water place. I'm trying to explain, but...
No, I actually get what you're talking about here. Like, Waffles, have you played Legends Arceus?
Yes.
Okay, so I actually think, while they definitely could have done more to differentiate the 5 locations, I think they did a relatively good job of making sure, like, each of those 5 locations feel like their own distinctive areas. And you can tell, and when you're going from one to another, you definitely have, like, a different feel for what you're supposed to do here, because you usually use, like, different mechanics. Like, yeah, you can end up using Basket Legion to surf in all 5 of them, but you're mainly going to be doing that on the Cobalt on the coastlands. You're not going to end up using them too much within the mountain region. You're mainly going to use Sneasler. And when it comes to not only what different Pokemon are available, so the equivalent to Sonic would be like different environmental challenges or different landscapes. Also, all of them just end up having like different music, different different color palettes, where they all end up striking you in different ways to make sure like each of these 5 locations come off different. Versus this game, where I think we can agree on this. Besides the desert location, the other 4 just come off like the other locations just come off like the exact same because they're all just kind of like gray, drab, and depressing. Which I
would still say, even though the desert one is different because it's a desert, to me it's still just a desert. It doesn't feel like maybe like a desert in a Sonic game. And I'm not saying, oh, I don't like realistic environments in my Sonic game. It's just nothing about it has any life or uniqueness in it. And I know some people are going to be like, well, that's the point. All the places are dead. Sonic says it's so lonely. It's just, I don't know. Do you want all the 5 places just to be boring?
Oh, yeah, no. That I agree with. Like, giving it a feel that makes it feel more fantasy-esque or Sonical. Why? That's another problem entirely. I'm just talking about, like, making sure, like, they at least come off distinctive towards one another.
And since I brought up Arceus, sorry, love, I just
no, go for it.
Since you brought up, I brought up Arceus. Basque Legion, once you get that Pokemon, it really does breathe new life into like the older zones where it's like, oh, cool, I can go over this ocean and explore this island that I wasn't able to go to before. And a similar thing happens later when you get the stretchy Sneasler. I forgot what it's called. It's a tall guy.
Sneasler. He actually said it.
Sneasler. Like when you get Sneasler, you can climb up like mountains. And it's like, why can't Sonic have some kind of unlockable or upgrade during a story point where it's like, okay, Sonic, now you can traverse this part of the island. It's like, oh, cool. I can backtrack and I can get new goodies and find new story segments and stuff. And it's like, wow, it's like the game's giving me more as I go, and I have more of a reason to go back to these places I thought I already explored all of, like something like that. Because you don't really have a purpose to go back to Island 1 when you're like past a certain point. Like the only reason why you'd have to go back is if you want to like 100% the map and then take a trophy off your PlayStation list. Like, yeah, I don't know. They all just kind of feel a little bit empty in a way.
No, I completely agree with you. This is something we were talking about before with, like, remember everyone was talking about how Sonic Frontiers seems like it was going to be Sonic's take on Breath of the Wild? That, without getting too deep into this, I kind of wish they did rip it off a little bit more here instead of ripped it off a little bit more, especially when it comes to the mechanics. Like, in this game, you already end up having several of your friends, several Sonic friends are locked away or end up locking away, and you end up having to free them over the course of the game. And I think it could have been really cool if they ended up giving you certain abilities once you end up unlocking them. So while they were still ghosts and still trapped on the island, you could tap into their abilities when you end up going from one place. Oh, when you end up, so you can end up traveling and traversing into different locations with their abilities. Like when it comes to Knuckles, you can have a better chance to be able to like climb up mountains. And when it comes to Tails, you get a huge boost into the sky. You can like hover and fly into certain places, and that can end up opening up the map a little bit more. But no, you're right here. You could pretty much like go through the entire location just as Sonic. And once you end up 100% in the map, which you only would want to do just so you can get the trophy, there's not really much of a benefit or incentive to continue going around and exploring these different locations. It's just I
think the only reason why you backtrack is to again the trophy hunting thing, but also like the big fishing mode, which I guess we'll maybe touch on later. Like in each island, big fishing thing has its own assortment collection of fish you can only get in like each one of those like places, but you don't even get a reward for doing it. Like it's just like a little message on the screen, but you don't get like a player reward. You don't find Froggy or anything. So there's no point to going back to an earlier island to do that either.
I mean, overall, to fishing, I don't have too many deep thoughts. It would just simply be that I'm thankful it's there because it helped me to get like keys and stuff whenever I was just getting bored of like going to everything. So it's just kind of fun to just go over there and grind a little bit and then get what I need and keep moving. So I do think its utility is very useful.
Oh yeah, completely agree. I think that's the only. You can get another trophy once you end up going to like a Big's fishing spot and just randomly getting like everything that's available in like one of the ponds. But that's like pretty much it. And the only reason that you need to go back to those is because its tokens don't end up regenerating when you go from one location to another, which is fine. Like they kind of do something similar in Mario Odyssey, but again, it's like there's no incentive for fun when it comes to going back to these islands. It's at best utility, at worst it's just so I can check off a trophy on PlayStation, which neither one of those are like good signs when it comes to being an adventure series. Which I kind of want to talk about this a little bit. You guys can tell me if we can save this more for story, but I think that's one of the biggest problems I have with the game overall. Like we can talk a little bit about the mechanics here and there, and I'm probably going to agree with a good chunk, if not most of the criticisms. But the biggest problem I have with Sonic Frontiers as a game is its atmosphere. It is so drab and dreary and depressing, and it's just not. And for an adventure game, which you think one of the things should be is about trying to make it fun and try to like make it entertaining and want you to come back to it, it's just kind of depressing for it. Like I brought up the desert location only because that was the only island of the 5 where I'm just like, yes, I absolutely like playing here because the music here doesn't make me feel like I just got off a funeral.
I think if I can add to that real quick, is that I agree with you, but just in a slightly different way, which is that I think I'm fine with them going for drab and depressing if the atmosphere, like if the level design actually like matched it. Like what if we had because here's the big problem, right? They want to go for an atmosphere, but they can't even do the atmosphere correctly because they have floating rails and springs that don't look like they belong in this location. And pop-in, that's crazy. And so like you're running around and like it might have felt cool if like you had to like go into like this spooky cave, right? And it had like all these different environmental things you could mess around with on that felt like creepy or whatever, like you really feel immersed in the setting. But to me it just feels half-hearted on both sides, where it's like it's not fun, or it doesn't feel like exciting and fun through like the springs and all these things because it contrasts so hard with the moody atmosphere. And and then the pop doesn't help either. So like, so I just think like it completely ruins doing any kind of atmosphere because it has all this contrasting stuff. And to the people who might say, well, Sonic has always had floating rails and stuff. However, in those games, you are always on top of those things. And 2, the world of Sonic has never been this realistic before, like the hub worlds in 06. And even in 06, they understood that when you get to the levels, you need to use creative things with the environment. Like when you're in that cave, it's like the spiraling cave that Sonic can run around. When you go into the desert, you have deserts popping, or you have coliseums and things popping out of the ground and stuff. So, and you have like these fire demons or whatever. In the city, in the level that's literally just a city on fire. That could be depressing, right? But there's a fire tornado and you skateboard down everything, So
you mentioned Soliana, and the thing about that, you said realistic environment, and the thing about that is that it had the music that kept you upbeat. There was like people there that cringe humans, whatever. Like all of them were like having a good time. You even had like the one like Eucordian guy somewhere up in the city. Like the environment, is cheery in tone.
Whereas in this game, it just doesn't. It's not able to do either. It's not able to be a fun adventure, and it's not able to do. It's not able to be like a moody, like, ooh, this is a creepy environment. Let's explore this Sonic and run through all these scary things. Like it would feel really cool if we felt like we were conquering the environment through Sonic.
It feels very Whiplashy.
No, I agree. Like for example, what besides the Cocos, which I don't think count at all, which barely count. What about this game is moody, or is meant to be moody, other than like
the music?
Other than the music and the fact that almost every island has like a gray color palette. Like what else is meant to be moody?
Exactly.
Like also the tone of the story does not help.
No.
No, you're absolutely right, because there's nothing about the island like ruins in a Sonic game. Please, that's all of Angel Island. Island isn't moody, So that's that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, what if
music is a powerful thing. Like music
absolutely.
Can really, so it definitely that has a part in it.
Yeah, so I agree with you. There's nothing else that's moody about it, so it just feels depressing in a way that doesn't feel earned, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't feel like it would be one thing if like we came to this island and like we saw, I don't know, just anything that would suggest like, oh, this is like an abandoned whatever. But all we have are just like the little Cocos running around and like ruins, and it's like, okay, they're just ruins. Like who cares? So I don't know. Yeah, but I agree with you. But I'm trying to think. I guess as far as I didn't say anything about combat. I actually really don't like combat. I think the
Same.
impact of most of the hits is not there, and I think I hate how you counter or block or whatever. Because to me, I thought you had to time it, and it's like no, actually timing it will get you killed. What you want to do is just when you see that little thing on you, just hold it down and you win. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So
I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like I might already be starting to play more. But yeah, I don't like the combat in the game, and I genuinely wish at certain points I wish I was playing as the Werehog. Because I don't know what it is, but something about the Werehog's gameplay design just was so much more fun than this. I don't even know why. Something about the gameplay in
what
this.
the Werehog has is it actually uses squash and stretch, and like it has good sound effects. The thing that ruined the Werehog wasn't its combat inherently. It was that the levels were like 15 to 20 minutes, and you heard the same exact song every time you fought, which mentally murders you. So Werehog had potential. It had the basics of hitting things feel satisfying, right? Because you have the big stretchy arms, and you like his hands glow.
When you kill them, you get all those like sound effects, and the purple lights all go into you, and you absorb them.
Yeah, and like the enemies make noises. They go like when they die or whatever, so you feel like this satisfying, like they disintegrate. So it's all in what it comes down to for the combat is one, it doesn't look flashy enough. Like the hits just don't feel that impactful, and two, the sound design is just not really there. And I think the actual combat itself, like blocking and all these things, just doesn't feel fun to pull off. So.
I think part of it could be that Sonic doesn't feel very strong as a character, and maybe like lore-wise, it kind of makes sense for him to be more like a less power, but more like Death Thousand Cuts kind of attacks, maybe. But something about like the Werehog. The Werehog felt more satisfying to punch and hit and destroy, but here Sonic just feels a lot weaker and slower to defeat enemies.
All right, actually, let me see if I can jump into this real quick because I actually do want to talk about this a little bit. So I have more of a positive view on this, but I'm actually more curious about like what could have been done to actually fix this so you guys would like this. So because I've heard this kind of criticism before, especially for like Muso 1001 games like Age of Calamity or Persona 5 Strikers. So when it comes to like the moves, let's just keep it simple and talk about like these small entry guys that you end up coming across, that you randomly come across while you're traveling across the island. Now, one of the issues I definitely have is that like, especially when you get to the second island, they just start like once you end up attacking them once, they just immediately end up getting into that can defense, and then you have to auto circle them, break them out of it, and then you end up having to hit them multiple times. One of the reasons why I actually do agree with you guys a little bit is that when I end up getting attacked by like 4 or 5 of them, I'll end up kind of beating them before I realize that they're dead. Beating them before I even realize that they're dead. And it's just like, oh, I beat them. Okay, let's move on. And I don't really get like any type of satisfaction from like, yeah, I actually like put some effort into it. So I do agree with you, like so I guess the question is like, if you were going to, from a high level, try to redesign the fights with like with Sonic versus like a handful of those small grunt characters, what do you think could have been done to fix it?
I'm not too sure, but
yeah, go ahead.
Well, for me, I'm not too sure because I think one thing that we kind of just, for me, I've just kind of figured out is that both Unleashed and even Persona 5 Strikers, they have smaller fry enemies that don't really do any damage, but it just kind of feels satisfying to play.
It makes you feel powerful. Yeah, like take out the trash.
Just completely knock out a whole crowd of low stake foes, and then you maybe spend about 5 to 15 seconds taking out a medium to large foe. I think that could definitely play a part.
Fodder. You need fodder to make everything else feel a little stronger. That's one thing I would add, and then the other thing I would say is that I would just much prefer that they actually react to being hit. Like I think there should be a system to where like if I jump an enemy and I hit them, like, and I mean jump as in like they don't see me in their line of sight or whatever, then like when I hit them, they should go flailing forward and like hit the ground. That way, and you can do that. Like Kingdom Hearts games do this all the time, and it's what makes hitting Heartless so satisfying. Is that when you hit a shadow, it flails back and lands on its back, and it starts twitching for a little bit, and then it gets back up, and you're like, ha, kicked your ass, idiot. So like that's what you want. You want Sonic to be quick, and that his hits are like, it's like, oh gosh, I didn't see that coming, and like it feels like you hit them. Whereas instead, it's just a health bar going down, and that doesn't feel as satisfying. And then two, this is just an easy fix. Just make it so that I have to try to block. That's it. That would fix so much stuff, because there's nothing satisfying about seeing the little laser thing getting a 3-second head start, and then you just hold the block button. You don't even have to move really. They hit you. All right, you can counter now. So just make me have to just literally make me have to try.
In my now unviewable long play that when the game first dropped, 19 hours, I struggled on one boss because I just assumed, oh, it's like you got to parry at the time the attack comes. Oh, I
did this too. Yeah.
And I must have gotten hit like 7 times by like the second boss, and like, what's going on? Am I doing it wrong? Like, come on, is the game bugged?
Same for me.
And then I just like messed around when the missiles came with like the parry button. I'm like, wait, you can just hold this down infinitely.
Yeah, and then you don't have to try at all.
Wait, no.
Yeah.
And that's what they want you to do.
It's actually better than that. If you guys ever, like, I'm talking about both you two and to anyone who's listening, if you ever go back and play Sonic Frontiers, if you ever jump and then try doing the parry, you'll just stay there midair. You'll just like hover there. Everything else will be able to move around you, but you'll just like stay there frozen in space. And yes.
Yeah, I gotta try this right now while we're talking.
But yeah, I think that overall sums it up as just like, it's just a matter of like the attacks actually feeling like they're doing damage, and then just giving me an actual challenge beyond like quick step a little bit or like homing attack at the right time. Like, you gave me a block. Let me have to work on timing. So yeah, those are just basic things I would do. And then I think like some of the gimmicks aren't that fun for the bigger bosses, but like that's a whole can of worms that it's just more of like, tinker with that a little more, make them a little more fun. But yeah. Okay, and then I'm trying to think anything else.
Oh my god, Lavi was right. You just stick in the air. You are just motionless in the air.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But I do want to end on a positive note for the gameplay. So let's talk about what I would assume all of us enjoyed. The Bonkers boss fights.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you think of those? I mean, I'll go real quick. Is that I think they are very jank, but it doesn't matter. They have a lot of like, clipping through the enemy, or like you're not exactly sure like if I'm supposed to get this close or whatever, but none of that really matters because the energy of the fights are so good, and like just like the crazy stuff you can pull off while using the same techniques that you've been using in the game. I love in the first boss that you can just do. I tried this. I was like, can I side loop around this enemy? Would it let me? And I could. And then it gives a completely new animation where it tosses the boss into the air and you can beat the shit out of him. So like that stuff is great. So I really enjoy them.
I would say mechanically they're like a mess. They're fine. They're just not very interesting on a mechanical level. I would say they're really forgiving actually on a difficult level as well. Because I was playing on hard mode, and I'm gonna be honest. Besides like the second to last boss and the final boss on hard mode, the bosses are really easy. You just kind of mash buttons. You don't even have to like use a specific attack. You just hem on that controller, and just beat it after a bit. Maybe you have to parry like at second and third boss, and I'm gonna guess at like the final one as well. But they're very easy. It's all in the story. Well, the kind of context of the fight scene, the
presentation,
music blaring in the background, the presentation, all of that. Just
the sound effects are actually good.
Yeah,
they got little. They have like little cinematics.
Oh yeah, so
yeah.
Like
that was the
you're never
highlight of, like,
you
the
never
whole
have
game.
time to be bored because it's always giving you a new thing to do, like a
Oh,
new
yeah.
gimmick, like ride to the shield. Now he has lasers on his back, so you need to avoid those. Now you need to block at this time. Now he's shooting a giant laser. Mash the button. Now you need to timer button prawns. Like you're never allowed to be bored.
Like, I've never really been a fan of, like, the supersonic sections in Sonic games outside of, like, I think maybe Sonic Adventure 1's Perfect Chaos level, but besides that, I think all of them have been kind of very hit or miss. But here, oh god, like, the first thing I wanted to do is immediately replay, like, the first two bosses, even if I struggle to get with, like, the parry on the second boss. Like, I wanted to replay them, and you can't. You have to start a whole new save file.
Yeah, hopefully they just add a boss rush mode because they already have an arcade mode for the cyberspaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I will say this: I got to use Sonic to beat up a giant kaiju robots. I'm kind of satisfied on that. Like, I wasn't a big fan of like some of the button mashing, but I've never been a big fan of like just hyper button mash. I've never been a big fan of that. But gameplay wise, no, I really loved the bosses so far. They've been a lot of fun to deal with, especially like I know he's not like an official boss, but it was kind of cool having like tame the shark during the desert section. That was actually kind of cool too.
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty fun. That little boss.
It gave me a lot of Secret Rings fan, and as it's like second fan and only second fan, I enjoyed that. Gave me big vibes.
Next to Emu Emmy.
Yes.
Oh really? She likes it?
Yeah,
Yep.
she loves the storybook games.
Yay! If you hear this, I'm the other fan. Yay!
All right. So, anything else we have to say about the gameplay in particular?
Not really. I think overall, at least for me, I think this is a good direction to go in. I think I didn't get Sonic's general movement is very tight. I enjoy that they need to keep this, which is that you can literally change everything about it. You can go into the menu and be like, you want his top speed to be higher, you want his turning speed to be lower, you want this to be more loose. Like you can change all that. Keep that for every Sonic game. Allow me to customize
100%.
them.
Yes.
And so I think just going forward, if they can just do a lot better with cyberspace in terms of the aesthetics, make the world feel more like it's a world and not just like a place you slapped Mario Maker assets down on, then like I think overall they have a good formula. They just kind of need to work out the jank and the unambition as far as the aesthetic. So yeah.
I also failed to mention this when I was talking about the gameplay. Something that I didn't really crack onto until like halfway through the game. You can use the homing attack while you're on like the ground, which is a well-loved thing I didn't know I wanted until now.
It's
the
really
moment
cool.
you see like that, the moment you see like that triangle on like the enemy, you can just homing attack them, and it is great.
Makes things a lot smoother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It stops the process of jump, home attack, jump, home attack. You just the moment you see it, straight up go for the punch. And it's great.
Yeah. So that's all I have to say for the gameplay.
All right. As for myself, I completely agree with both you guys. I do think this is a proper step in the right direction. Just hammer out a couple of kinks here and there, and I think should be good. I think this is definitely where they should be going for whatever the next game is. However, there is one thing I'm going to disagree with you on, Waffles, and I think this is a good way to start shifting over into the other topic we're going to talk about with this game. I don't want them doing I don't want them doing any more retro levels anymore. I want whatever the next games are going to be to stand on their own and not continue to keep.
That's what I mean. I meant if they do like boost levels again, like that kind of idea, like having like optional boost levels and give better aesthetics, which would be new things. Yeah.
So agree with you on that. So I think this is a good chance to talk about the story of Frontiers.
I like the part where the character said they were gonna grow as a person, and nothing happened.
And then it happened in 2025. I've seen the future. I played the next game. They totally followed up on this.
So
wowee.
So here's the thing. I know I'm a bit, I'll say, infamous for criticizing.
You're the Y guy.
The what guy?
You're the Y guy.
Oh, the Y guy. Yeah. Actually, thank you for bringing that up. So I'm a little infamous for criticizing the writer for this game, Ian Flynn. And one of the criticisms I got in particular was that during one of the discussions I had with them, I ended up asking why so many times. I did that for a reason. One, it was an interview. I think it's fair to try to ask like what a particular person's creative decisions, what ultimately led a person's creative decisions to making certain creative decisions. I think that's fair game. But secondly, and more importantly, one of the biggest problems I have with Flynn is that he seems like he just kind of pumps stuff out in his work for the sake of it and not for any type of coherent theme or to actually communicate anything to his audience. He's a very surface level. I am just going to hit a particular theme. I am just going to hit a particular aesthetic and just pretend I can carry myself off of that and references. And that is very much here in Frontiers, along with very light surface level meta commentary. I'm not. No, I'll put this better. I wanted to give him credit. I genuinely did. I do not.
He means this. He said it before the game dropped. He means this, guys.
Yes,
I assure you.
Yes, I wanted to give him credit. I even especially after Derp told me that there was a whole bunch of homoerotic subtext between Sonic and Knuckles, and I knew Knuckles is his favorite character, is Flynn's favorite character. I was like, yes. Let me if you were found a way to incorporate Son Knucks into the canon, go for it. Like Son Amy, anyone can do that. Let me see some Son Knuckles. But then I end up playing the game, and it's just all in the animations, and I'm like, I can't give you credit on this. And when it comes to the story overall, I think it's better if we end up going through each of the characters one at a time, starting with Amy. But I am this is honestly the reason why I think one of the other reasons why the overly moody tone just does not work. Like from a gameplay perspective, you're right. Both of you guys are right.
I can't wait for the comments to come out and someone's gonna be like, I can't believe he was only gonna give Flynn a thumbs up if Sonic's was canon. Oh my god, you guys. Ship war.
I definitely give him points.
He only cares about the shipping.
I absolutely would give him points for that at the bare minimum. So yeah, hold me to that. If he ever does that anywhere else, and does it competently, I'm gonna have to stress that, and I'll get to that later. But yeah, I wanted to give him some credit on that. But when it comes to this game, we were talking about this before, like when it came to the gameplay, where the overly moody aesthetic just doesn't work because on one hand, it's trying to have like this moody color palette, trying to have like this really depressing music in most of the setting, but we still have like this quirky gameplay mechanics that don't really gel with each other. But then when it comes to the story, kind of has the same problem too. It wants to try to have everyone trying to confront death and trying to confront existential crisis, especially with Sage. But then when you end up looking at what their ultimate, but not only do most of the characters not really tie into that theme very well, it doesn't really have anything to say with the idea of death or existential crises in the first place. But yeah, what did you guys think?
Just as overall beginner thoughts.
Yeah, just surface level thoughts right now.
Yeah, for me it would just simply be that so as a Flynn fan, I'm a fan of Flynn's work on Preboot especially. I think it's his best work. And I think some of his stuff in Reboot is really charming. I think one of his best qualities as a writer is that he can get into the heads of the characters and then have their banter feel really snappy and not quirky, but just feels like the characters are actually have chemistry, which is a thing that I feel like a lot of Sonic stories have. And so definitely, and then as far as the kind of the stuff he would do in Preboot, where he would really go into okay, if this character existed in this world, then what would be some dark implications for this, or what would be some more serious implications? And he would get to it, and he would have them explore it, and he would have some good and some bad in terms of characters reacting to it positively or negatively, and they would come out the other side through their friends or things like that. Or he would explore how this impacts other characters, how it makes Dr. Eggman look really cruel, or how it shows this character's fault. So he would really just take these interesting concepts of the character's existence and go for it. So this game tries to have both those things. It is one part, it is character interactions. That's the whole thing, the whole reason these characters are in the story, because they don't do anything else, is character interactions. And then he has Sage, who embodies okay, she's this AI little girl who is growing sentience. What are some implications? And her dad is Dr. Eggman, an evil monster. So what are the implications for that? What could be really interesting? How is that going to contrast to XYZ, blah, 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 blah. So let me be very clear. This is the worst thing Flynn has ever written. So I have a lot of things that in IDW that I dislike, but in that, in that case, I feel like the banter is at least a little better. Here, I think it's like at the lowest it's ever been banter-wise. And then as far as serious like torturing the characters, or in a better way, like looking into the characters in the ways that would make sense for the tone of this game. It's a dark, moody tone, so we can kind of do that. He completely fails. And in some ways, he not just fails to write a Sonic story, he literally forgets how to write a story. So we will get into all that.
All right, Dirt.
Yeah, as for me, God, where do I begin? I'm not an Archie fan. I tried to read Archie like towards the start, could not get into it. Like after 30 issues, I think I gave it its shot, and I just could not jive with it. I later went on to read. Yeah, I later went on to read reboot issues, Tales Adventures mini series arc, the Champions arc, and then there was another one that what was it called? It was like the one where he goes across like the clans.
Oh, Journey to the East.
Yeah, Journey to the East. For like the most part, I thought that was kind of meh. But I enjoyed the Tales Adventure arc from Flynn, and also the Championship arc. The Champions arc. In fact, I love it. Like that's a 9 out of 10. Unironically, like
I agree.
I would say, I would say, like the moment I read that, I was like, oh my god, wait, Flynn can write really good stuff. What's IDW going on? Because I also was reading IDW, and I'm gonna be honest, I hate it. I read like 30 issues, and I hate it. At one point, I thought like the Sonic Heroes 2.5, whatever you want to call it, arc was fine. I thought it was serviceable, but in retrospect, I can't do that again, because it's just like the nostalgia kind of pandering thing. It's the thing, but again, I can't get into it again. I don't have the same vibe with it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is like you have seen a little bit of Flynn's potential in writing, and so this was like a complete letdown in comparison to like what you're like. Oh, it seems like you can do it.
Yeah, I can see the potential. I don't believe that he is all not there. It's just here. I hated what they did in Frontiers, and nothing vibed with me. I can see why people do like it. With what they go for, I just think it falls really flat. Yeah, and in some points,
go ahead.
I'm just asking, why did we do it this way instead of another way? Which I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah, I mean, and if everyone's ready, I think we can back that up by talking about Amy. Let's talk about each character from the islands, because like I said, the game's kind of split up into Amy, Knuckles, and Tails are the character interactions, and the point is basically just to enjoy those characters kind of being around each other and seeing Sonic save them, and what Sonic means to them, and how his dynamic with them impacts their life or is going to. So let's start with Amy.
I want to spread love to the entire world.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I want to spread love. After I just saw these couples and families die in front of me, that means I want to keep doing this over and over again. I still don't know. Like, I want to get into Amy as a character. I just want to focus on this really quickly. I have no idea how you get from the jump of, hey, I just brought these two alien beings together, and then they died. I want to keep doing this. Like, I don't get that logic thread at all. Even if you want to try saying, well, they were happy at the very end. I might buy that if they actually focus more on that rather than focusing on the fact that they just kind of died. But it was kind of a weird mix of the two. So again, it's still a weird jump. But anyway, Amy, I think we can just go and say this. She's the one that has the least reason to be here. I like Amy. I think she's really great as a character in general. But she has her story is like the most nonsensical of all of them, save for the other character we'll get to. And I'm just like, I don't get why she's here other than just the fact that she's the main girl of the franchise. Like, if you guys remember, what did you guys think of her story?
Yeah, with Amy,
I felt
Yeah, go ahead, Derp.
I felt nothing. I felt nothing. And to be fair, I don't dislike Amy as a character. I just can't ever get a general grasp on her, and I just kind of she's definitely the lowest character on my favorite Sonic female characters list.
Oh yeah.
Like every other Sonic female character that's in the canon, like across the board, like it's just more interesting to me.
Mhm.
And it just kind of seems like I don't know something about Amy. Just never interested me. So
Oh, I think I can explain that.
the story as well, just like what they went for. I was not only just disinterested by the natural feeling I already have, but just what they went for. Just I don't know, like what you said. It's just you two lovers together, and it's like I want to spread love to the world. What does that mean? You're just gonna go around and Tinder people? Like what?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, it really feels like the original idea for Amy was that they wanted her to be like the Sonic fangirl. But after that ended up getting so much negative backlash, they decided to just completely take that away.
And now
But
she is just girl.
she is
She
just
cares.
girl.
She
And-
just cares a lot.
And it's never even done in a way that's meant to be like a character conflict or a challenge for her. Like maybe she gets too invested with certain people. Maybe she is a little oblivious to what people need, or when it comes to, or maybe she's like a little too forward or something. But it's just she cares. She is there. And while I am absolutely blaming everyone who's remotely responsible on staff for this, I'm really holding Flynn in particular for really being critical for Flynn on this in particular, because this same problem happens in IDW. Because for some weird reason, and this is his words, I wouldn't make this up if I wanted to, he thinks he has to make every version of Amy one character, which is insane by any degree, because like she's clearly, like of all the characters, she's probably the one that's gotten like the most drastic retelling in every version. So when he tries to like bridge the 06 version, the Heroes version, the Adventures version, the Generations version, the Lost World Unleashed, it just blends into this one. But you have to remove the fangirlism. You get a character who's just there. She was just there to be, I'm the cute one. I can be the nice one. I am just there to be Carrie. And it just leaves us a really nothing character who not only can't be funny and entertaining, it doesn't, worst of all, it doesn't give anything for Sonic to bounce off of. Like, say what you will about the whole weird fangirl dynamic and how creepy, borderline yandere gets in certain games, which I totally get the criticism around. It's at least something.
Yeah.
At least something. But now she's just kind of left to just being just the character who's just around to just meander around and just to be the Smurfette principal of the group. And I think this just kind of does her character a disservice. I get not wanting her to be a yandere, but you got to give her something to work with, or she's just going to be
yeah.
Going to be nothing.
I think the only issue is that she is like arguably the main Sonic canon, despite what Twitter users would say by calling Amy underrated. No, she is.
She's not a main she's not a main cast member. I think there's a little bit of a conversation around that, because I think, especially for a franchise like this, that kind of besides Sonic, it kind of picks and chooses who they want to have in every game and every branch of the media.
I suppose.
But in this case, but let's be honest, more often than not, she is meant to be the main character. She is meant to be a main character. She is meant to be one of the main characters in the market. She definitely gets more attention than like Rouge or Blaze. So if you're going to go ahead and bring her in, she needs something to work with. But
this is my own kind of immediate opinion. This isn't something I've been thinking about for like a while. It's something I've thought about. For some reason, people really love that tarot card shit that was referenced in Origins and also this game somewhere. I forgot. It was like first portion anyway. It's like,
yeah,
why don't you make
it's when the Supersonic boss ends. He goes, "I'll be back before you can do your next reading," and I clap because I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, like why don't we make Amy more of like a weird girl, like all up in that kind of stuff? That could be neat, I think.
I just thought of this. You know, like the thing about like her being like kind or whatever, and I think the problem with it is that she is kind in the same way that like everyone else in this game is kind. Like, sure, like Sonic can be
Yeah.
like he's a little grumpy in that one cutscene where he's like, Amy, this isn't really going anywhere. But for the rest of the game, he's like, I'll help the Coco. Like, sure, yeah, let's do that. And like just the fact that like Amy just slightly cares more, where she's like, Sonic, they want to like be together, and then but that's the same way that Knuckles is like, Sonic, they want to build this thing, and I relate because I also like to build things, or Tails does that. You know, these ones want to battle, and I relate because I'm Knuckles and I also like to battle. Like, there's nothing really that different, and so like it just makes it to where it's just like, okay, you care about the Cocos, get in line. Like I don't know, it doesn't there's nothing to invest you in it. So I thought, okay, how would we be able to maybe make that work a little more? And you bringing up the tarot cards, if they wanted to actually have this the tarot cards be a thing, and like not just be a reference, what if the reason they find the Chaos Emeralds isn't just the Chaos Emeralds went somewhere, so we're following them? What if like Amy was like doing like a reading or whatever, and then she saw like she was like, oh wait, I think it's saying that like we need to go to like we need to go west, and it's saying like the west card, Chaos Emeralds, danger, and Sonic's like, danger and an adventure? Huh, you couldn't have picked a better date, you know, something like that. And she's like, date? It's like, don't push your luck. Like, you could have like a funny little banter or whatever. And then they get there, things go wrong, and then she feels like it's her fault because she's like, oh, did I mess something up? Is it my fault for doing that? And then she sees all these other people who want help, and you could create a Coco that has like a similar story to that. And then it's Amy trying to redeem herself in that way and just like being helpful or whatever. That in that way, there's at least an immediate conflict for her to react to. And you don't have to do that. But if you're going to have it be like this somber game or whatever, then give each of the characters a flaw that within the world they physically help to fix. Like Tails, what if like earlier in the story they're fighting Eggman, right? And he actually does something and screws up, and he's like, yeah, I'm a screw up, like I keep doing it. And then in the level, like you said, this is where gameplay and story would have went hand in hand. Now he is helping you do certain things that you couldn't do otherwise. And it's like, oh yeah, this is why I'm on the team, or this is why I'm not just some worthless person. Again, I would prefer if they were just cool on their own and they were just doing cool things. But if we're going for this moody atmosphere, and you want like these like moments, then the moments have to mean something. It can't just be, whoa, Amy being nice to cute little creatures like everyone else, and she wants to be nice to everybody. Pretty cool. You know?
Yeah.
You need context.
Maybe a bit more conflict as well.
Yeah.
You just kind of that's something that I've noticed in the game, is that you just kind of meander around the environment and then just progress the plot, and then it ends with just the big bombastic thing. It's like, why can't like there be a little bit more conflict within the stories of the individual characters or something?
Or also, what if you came to the island and the Cocos are actually like afraid of Sonic, like they're not used to visitors, right? And then Amy is actually the one, and like he wants some information about like what's going on in the island, and maybe he needs to, you know, he wants to try to figure stuff out, and he's like, I can't help you guys if, you know, you won't talk to me. And you know, they're getting attacked by like these monsters or whatever, but they're running away after he saves them. And then Amy is actually the one who is able to, like, through her kindness and like the way she goes about things, where Sonic is just like, hey, like over here, you know, you gonna talk to me or what? Like, you know, Amy is actually a lot more kinder, or like gets on her knees and like puts her hands out and is like able to interact with them more. And then there you go. Now Sonic has access to the Cocos. And then when you go to another island, Knuckles could maybe have a similar problem where he's like, oh, they won't listen to us. And then Sonic's like, oh, don't worry, here's how you connect with them. And then he like, maybe he pulls off a flower or whatever, and they like flowers. And there you go. Get them to trust you a little bit. Whoa, it transferred from one island to the other. So now when Sonic meets the Cocos, he can interact with them more. And where did he get that? Amy. Done.
Yeah, that also helps, with the word cohesion, just kind of like flows into the next story just by a smidge, because that's another thing, is that none of the stories actually connect, really. They're all just kind of these self-contained, I guess I'd say adventures, but they don't feel like adventures.
They're not. Like, it's really just a bunch of vignettes back to back that don't really flow into one another. Like when I was playing through Knuckles and Amy's levels, I ended up accidentally getting like all of their tokens first. and then before like continuing through each of their before continuing with each of their like clips. And when you try doing that, they don't. Besides like one, they don't flow into each other that well. It's just kind of like really like not only do they not flow from one to the other very well, they don't flow from what's going on in the gameplay. It really feels like I'm just watching a completely different. It's like I'm playing the game, then I'm shifting over to a completely different story from another game, and other than just like them using the same resources. So it just really feels exceptionally disjointed between all of them in particular. Then when it comes to, I think this would actually be a good moment to shift over to Knuckles.
Yeah, let's go to Knuckles.
This is probably where I really started noticing that they really want to do Memberberries. Like they kind of did it with Amy with the tarot card thing, but that's just a one-off line. I don't want to get that nitpicky. But then when we get into the moment, like especially at the end, where he's like, "Oh yeah, this place reminds me of Angel Island because they both have ruins," and then
and they show us a picture of Sonic 3
twice. They do that twice.
I laughed when that came up.
I
was great.
Watching that scene, and I was like, "Wait, what is it? Is there like a?" Because like before they showed it, like he was like, "Whoa, dude, this reminds me of Angel Island." I was like, "Wait, is there like a teleporter from Sky Sanctuary, or is there like a barrel from like?" I was like, "What is it? What is it?" It's just like that they're old ruins.
Yeah, no, like in the following cutscene, I was trying to like squint at the background to like see, am I not seeing something here? Like, what's he talking about? And then it kind of hit me. It's just it's just the laziness of it all and the weird. It doesn't really connect. It must have been something that was in like a draft, and they never ever followed it up in like the visuals.
Yeah,
just kind of rely on someone to just go along with it.
And what made it even worse was that to add to the Memberberries, or they have a picture of Sonic 3, but then it's not a picture of like any ruins in Sonic 3. It's the scene of Knuckles chuckling, because unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. So there you go. It's like guys, why wouldn't you show like ruins if remembering ruins?
Yeah. I also don't. I know they do this in like Sonic Adventure 1. I think actually wait, hold up. No, sorry. I was gonna like play like make an excuse, but like in Sonic Adventure 1, they made an entire flashback scene up where Amy's like, "I remember when Sonic saved me from Metal," and it's like a flashback to like CD. And it's like an entire new cutscene. It's not high budget. You can clearly tell it's just an image for a background with two like PNGs moving across. But it's like they tried to do something. Whereas here, it's literally a screenshot with a filter over it. Like, come on, get like the art department or whatever like corner of the room to be like, "Hey, I can draw a really cool visual here." Would that not be more appreciated than what they went for? Especially with like how the movie did that really cool like those like 5 scenes where they have all those flashbacks to like the echidnas. Like people love those, and it's like why not do like some kind of cool PNG visual? I don't know, anything just to convey what's going on. You don't have to be lazy.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, let's talk about Knuckles' arc in particular, which
go for it.
It really just seems like, I know a lot of people have been complaining about like he has not been or even mentioned Angel Island since like I think if we're going by like hard canon, I think Sonic
Heroes no, actually Adventure 2. Yeah, you're right.
Right. And
well, actually, in the Sonic Forces prequel comic,
okay, there are multiple reasons why I don't count that. So no, but if we really want to try to get like super nerdy nosebleedy, we can kind of reference Dark Brotherhood. But either way, it's been well over a decade.
And that's not canon as much as I'd love it to be.
Right. That too. So when it comes, and even that's not that canon. But when it comes to the game itself, I've seen people make tons of criticism about that, which fair enough. But it seems like the dress here is just like having Knuckles realize that he's lonely, and then deciding to go, you know what, maybe I will leave Angel Island once in a while. And I'm like, did we need him to say that? Like that's pretty much what he's been doing ever since. Why do we need to dedicate an entire section to him just learning that?
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if any of you guys felt this, and I know it's probably one of those things where they just stapled it on after the fact, like the episode Shadow and comics for Forces, but I feel like the prequel comic they did for this game, as well as the prologue for Knuckles, what it was, like, I feel like they didn't really connect either to this game.
They didn't. Like,
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
I feel
you're
like
right.
the whole thing with like Knuckles saying like, but sometimes, where it seemed like almost he wanted like help from a friend or something. Like,
yeah, doesn't
I feel like that
go,
didn't really
doesn't go anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah, I felt it felt like it didn't really go anywhere in this. I
that
feel like
that doesn't go anywhere. And then like the mystery of like why is there like a portal on Angel Island is literally they moved there one time after they left their islands. It's like, okay,
as cheesy as it would have been.
Was it flying at the time? Was like what? Oh, we don't get to know. No, whatever.
Like, as cheesy as it would have been, even if it was executed poorly, and it was just like this line verbatim, I wouldn't mind if there was like, Sonic, sometimes I think I might need your help. And it's like, what, Knuckles? It's like, yeah, no, sometimes I
And he
think
goes, "What are you, gay?" And he goes, "Yeah. What about it?" He says, "Me too."
Yay! Pride flag! I don't know, just like something to contextualize that prologue, but nothing really does come up. I don't like that. I don't like that prologue.
The prologue makes less sense. Like, for example, on a smaller level, the gears aren't the right color. Like, he's supposed to be in the desert section, so they're supposed to be yellow, but the gear he picks up is blue, which is a nitpick. But then you kind of end up having to realize, like, why does this portal just take him directly into take him to the island? That's not the desert island. But then on top of that, why does it not take him like into a cyber?
It doesn't even work like it does in the game.
Right.
God.
And that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for it to be revealed, like, oh, they use these as like teleporters between the islands because they're islands, and it'd be cool to turn. It's like, no, it just keeps like memories and stuff. It's like, oh, well, then why did it teleport him there?
I guess since we're talking about this now, I will say I do like that prologue, even with its issues. Like, it's well animated, and I do think the writing, self-contained.
No, Flynn wrote that. It was good. It was good.
Yeah, no,
what's the problem?
I'll go back to my prior statement. Those two comics I mentioned, the Championship arc and the Tales Adventure Archie arc, I like those from Flynn, and I also do like this Knuckles prologue. I guess those are the exceptions.
Well, I can explain why, because there's actually this one's a little bit of an exception, but I feel like Flynn's a lot better when it comes to just like kind of being comedy. Like, I still have some issues with him here and there with this comedy stuff, but he tends to have much less problems when he's just being comedic. Whenever he tries to be dramatic or serious, he has like a 20% batting average at best when it comes to making sure like everything in the story makes some kind of sense. More often than not, you end up getting stuff like Shattered World or the Memberberries arc, where it's just like, yeah, this is constantly breaking itself every 5 minutes, because again, he doesn't really seem to think through usually like what he's trying to do in his stories. He's just kind of like pumping them out, and that's kind of what happens with this in particular.
Yeah, whereas also one of his better strengths was Sonic Universe, just in general, where it's like when he had a contained 4 issues to tell a story, he was pretty good at it. Like, he was able to like, these are the characters, this is what it's going to be about. Here's like a little character arc they can go through. Boom, done, moving on. Not all of them were hits, but they at least felt more cohesive and more like they could focus more on the characters, because that was all it was allowed to be about. It didn't have to worry about being big picture and all this stuff.
Actually, yeah, I'll even add on to that. Like, he still had problems with this in reboot, but when it came to like the beginning of the reboot, so it's like Waves of Change, the Werehog 4-parter, and Champions. Those I still have some issues with here and there, especially the Werehog one, but they usually felt a lot more self-contained. They usually didn't just completely trip over themselves when it comes to what they were trying to go for, at least entirely. And that was usually because he was forced to tell a story within 4 issues and was forced to make sure that this, at the very least, had a beginning, middle, and end. But when he tries doing like these grand epics, he kind of just forgets half of his own stuff and just kind of ends up tripping through a good chunk of his work. So, and that not only does that happen, especially in the Memberberries arc, but it also ends up happening here too.
Yeah, well, because the problem I ultimately have with this is my core thesis for why these character things are bad, which is that instead of writing he writes this game as if he is writing the Archie comics when he came on, which is it is a monthly comic with a long history, and it's like it's in this one universe with not consistent rules, but a consistent like setting and a consistent character base, and like they're growing and changing based on things that happen in the story. So when he came onto that comic, he had to address things like Shadow is working with Eggman, Tails and Sonic have this weird thing with Fiona. He couldn't just delete it because that wouldn't make any sense. But the games have zero consistent continuity since SA2. And also there's years and years and years apart. And the reason the characters suck now in the games was because they took them in directions that they never were before. So it doesn't make any sense to me that he came onto this game and the way he writes is as if like, yeah, you're supposed to think Forces is like legitimate Sonic material as like a continuing story. And therefore we have to explain why Tails is going to get better. Amy is going to like focus on herself more because she was more of a fangirl in the other games. Instead, he should have just wrote them to be better, not write a game where they say they're going to be better in the next game.
And I'm sure we'll probably get to this point again and again because it is a definitely important point to like hammer home. And a multitude of other issues with this continuity, consistency, connection thing. I just want to say, he trailed off. My bad. We gotta get back to Knuckles.
Actually, I think that's a good shift over to Tails in particular, especially off of that point, because that is kind of the biggest issue with Tails' story arc in particular. It's like, hey, Sonic, why am I useless? I need to figure out a way to be more useful, and that's just his whole story bit. And I'm like, no one needed that to get addressed. If you want, like, not only
make him just make him do cool shit.
Yeah, no,
exactly.
Better.
Yeah, like Waffle said, not only has it been like years apart, almost all those games end with him gaining confidence again and putting him right back here where he was at the beginning of the game. So just have him start doing cool shit. We didn't need to have another game with him just lamenting the fact that he's doing it. Like, I get it. It's fun to be meta, but unless you're Dan Harmon, and even he fucks up with this a good chunk of the time, don't be meta. And don't be meta. Just tell a good story. And yeah, when it comes to Tails, just actually have him start doing cool stuff in particular, instead of just having a lament about it.
I said this in our group chat like a day ago, but like, why did we need Amy and Knuckles? Like that, I still say like whatever, blah blah blah, issue here, issue there, but like I think Tails could have used it the most, and I think it would have been better if we just had Sonic and Tails through the story, and maybe we do that story beat where it's like, on the first island, Tails is like, "Oh, Sonic, anxiety. I feel useless." And then we get over that story. Sonic like, "Tails, you're the best bud anybody could ever ask for. You what bud? You have two tails. You're smarter than Eggman. You can do it anything if you put your heart and mind to it." And Tails is like, "Yay!" Then we get to like the desert island. Tails comes along, and then maybe during this arc, Tails starts doing shit, and he starts to maybe kick butt alongside Sonic in like cutscenes. Maybe he starts like investigating the island more, and he's like, "Sonic, I found this clue to the thingy thing. We gotta go here and do that." And Sonic's like, "Wow, Tails, I'm so dumb. Thank you for helping me out there." And so Tails like, "Yay, I feel like I'm doing stuff again." And maybe like by the third island, Sonic's actually in like a bit of a pickle, and Tails has to actually like save him, maybe in like a cutscene or something. And it's
right.
Like,
so what you're suggesting is like a middle ground where it's like you can address it, but you address it at the start, and then the rest of the game is him just putting that into action instead of promising to do it in a separate game.
Yes, exactly. I don't think, because it feels like half of this game, sorry, maybe most of it, is essentially one big sequel bait. And I don't like that. That's boring.
Hey guys, want to see them be good characters? We'll probably do that next time.
Yeah, that's how it comes across.
And a lot of it feels like a response to like Sonic fan discourse, you know.
100%. Yeah.
And I think but I want to get into like the practical reasons that sucks, because for us we portray it as like it's annoying because it's kind of like it makes the characters kind of whiny, or we don't like it because it's just retreading ground. But okay, let's get on to like
feels like a waste of time.
Yeah, waste of time. But let's get to like a I want to address someone who might say, I find that interesting. I actually do want them to explore that stuff. Okay, cool. So here's where I think it becomes a problem, is that we don't actually get moments out of that, because a lot of the dialogue is still just remembering things. So it's just like, hey, when Sonic's talking to Knuckles about getting off the island, what is fun, or what is just engaging about Knuckles realizing that he wants to get off the island and that Sonic is his friend, but nothing comes of it. Like, wouldn't it have been cool if, like, he literally said, man, if I were Hyper Knuckles, I would have done that faster. Wouldn't it have been really cool if Knuckles got to fight the Titan with you, and like you got to do like instead of like Sonic just doing all the crazy anime stuff, you have like cool little animations of Knuckles and Sonic doing anything in the boss, and then it's like, yeah, this is why Knuckles and Sonic have each other's back, because even though they like banter, they pretend they don't like each other, or not like each other, but they pick on each other. At the end of the day, they're badasses who have each other's back, and like that would be really cool. Yeah,
I'm seeing posts on Twitter of people saying like, at least they're not cheerleaders in this game. It's like, are they not though?
They are though. They don't do it. Like, they don't do anything. The only reason they don't qualify as cheerleaders is because they're not fighting for the fight scenes, which is worse.
Yeah, well, and then like they hold hands and go into Sonic and save him, which again is not a hard-hitting moment, because again they're like, we're gonna help Sonic this time because he's protecting us, and it's just like, okay, and you do that by believing. I don't know what they did.
They just do a bunch of side quest stuff and hope Sonic does everything. It's like, no, this is not interesting.
So that's what I mean, is like the byproduct of all these things we're complaining about is like the characters don't get moments. All they get to do is just talk about, like, when Sonic and Knuckles are bantering, right? Their banter is not like new banter. Their banter is in reference to old banter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yes. It's in their banter about like, Knucklehead, all these types of things, is just in reference to the fact of like, hey, Sonic, when we're usually on adventures, this is kind of how it goes. I'm going to clean up your mess, Knucklehead, blah, 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 blah. And then you can get back to your island. Ha, ha, ha. If I were fighting that, I would have been Hyper Knuckles. Yeah, whatever, Slowpoke. Like, none of these things are like new instances being created for the story. It is literally just remembering the banter by having the same type of banter while also having the banter reference old stuff. For an example of where this would be, what I would want, right, is in SA2, you go into the pyramid or whatever, and Sonic is the one who leads the charge. And then they get there and like, we need 3 keys. And then they're like, oh, we need to find 3 keys or whatever. And then Sonic goes like, well, we know who can solve that. Knuckles, get to it, buddy. He's like, what, why me? He's like, you're the greatest treasure hunter I know, buddy. Good luck. He's like, like it takes place in a scenario, like they're doing things,
Right.
Yeah.
And that creates a new memory. So I don't know.
Yeah. I my favorite part was when the characters remembered an older game. It's like, okay.
And they were just being like, ha ha ha, we're friends. My favorite part was when Sonic was like, Amy watched 2 children die, and he was like, Amy, I'm here if you need me. Like, I'm here. And she's like, thank you. Man, I want to spread love. It's like, what does any of this mean?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? So since we've covered a lot of how this game has been referencing stuff in the past, how about we talk about one of the new characters of this mess?
Yes, let's talk about Sage.
I was really looking forward to Sage.
Me too.
Same. Why don't you start this one out, Dirk?
As one of like, I think like maybe the 100 people that like humans in the world building of Sonic, I was like initially over the fucking moon the moment I like saw the render or trailer, whatever it was. It's like, holy shit! Oh my god! This is the first human since Unleashed or whatever. It's like, yes! Oh my god! What are they gonna do with this? We're gonna like maybe like an island, new civilization, or we're gonna see like maybe new places on the world. Oh, how are they gonna react to Sonic and friends? Like, oh, this is gonna be so cool. There was also the pink human girl that is essentially dead, despite the knowing smile. Thanks, Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
But like Sage, I was so excited, and if people recognize like my username from like maybe mutuals on Twitter or YouTube, you would have known that I had a Sage profile picture for like a month, and I was like making posts every now and again, like Sage, new footage, and then the game dropped, and all of that diminished within like a couple hours, because Sage isn't a human. She's just an AI made by Eggman.
Which, by the way, my friend brought this up, and I thought about it. I was like, oh man, he's right. He's like, a lot of Sonic fans were looking at this like Sage, like Eggman made a daughter thing, and they were looking at it as like, oh, that's kind of cute. And he was like, okay, well then, question, how did Sage get made? Like, did he just create an AI and it randomly became a girl? And he's like, he's questioning questioning the pronouns, and I'm like, and he's just like, well, wait, did Eggman not make his robot? Like, does he not? What did? And if he did, then he designed it to look like a little anime girl. He's like, I don't think that's very wholesome or good. Like, I don't know what you people are talking about. This seems pretty creepy.
Yeah. The more you think about it, it just kind of gets weirder. And I also just question, okay, let's say he did design it this way. Why does she not? Why is she just like a pale, white-haired girl in a black robe? Like, it doesn't scream Eggman made,
Yeah, no,
like a robot. Yeah, like it. Let's use like Archie comics as a good example. Like in the Archie comics, you've got like all of these members of the Egg Empire, and they all have clothing that's very reminiscent of Eggman. And it's like, why not go for something like that, Ian Flynn?
Or they have robot, or they literally get legionized, which is where he puts robot parts onto these animal creatures because he's grafting himself. He's grafting himself onto them.
Right.
Sage doesn't really scream like Eggman-y, and at first I thought, is this a twist? But it's not really presented as like a twist. It's just like an offhanded comment, and it's like, oh.
Okay, so first off, you guys are both right. Secondly, I wanted to build on that because it's just like you're just like how tonally dissonant it is. Tonally dissonant is not only in terms of her design, but how her character ultimately functions. Like after designing like Orbot, Cubot, and all of his other robots, like why come up with a little girl? But it really feels like I don't know at what point Flynn was introduced into the creative process, but it really feels like this is another step of Flynn trying to give Eggman the Draco and leather pants treatment, whereas like, oh no, you see, he's not like super evil. He actually has layers and is really complex. Like, see, he even sees this AI girl as his daughter. Isn't that like really heartwarming? I'm like, no, like,
just like I was gonna say, that's inherently very creepy and bad.
Yeah, and what makes this worse? Following up on my older comment about the continuity consistency blog, is about how, like, why is the story that follows bosses? Why is the story of a sympathetic old man making a daughter that has to sacrifice herself to save the world the story that follows Eggman taking over the world? Potentially, no, actually outright killing people through his actions with like infinite working under him and all this stuff. Like,
and if we're going to go with the idea that so many Sonic fans are desperately trying to go with, that this is meant to be canon to the comics, this is after his second or his third apocalypse. So we are right now trying to say that the man who is actively looking to try to take over the world and kill everyone in the process, he has a soft spot with the daughter he ended up making up.
Like, why should I give a shit? No, fuck this guy. Fuck Eggman.
And oh god, okay, I want to let's just jump to Eggman. We can come back to Sage in a minute.
Yeah, we'll wrap back around.
Yeah, and when it comes to Eggman in particular, I don't know what not only when it comes to this weird need to try to make him sympathetic, the worst part is I don't know why they're doing it.
Why is he in the story? He doesn't do anything.
No, he doesn't. He just stands around barking orders at a thing he made. I don't know why Eggman had to exist. Make Sage her own thing.
Yeah, that's what the story feels like. It would be designed around Sage being on this island and this weird entity we need to learn about, and just being like like Sonic and the Black Knight or Secret Rings, where there's just a new villain, Because Eggman just feels. Go ahead.
You could have retooled the story for Sage to instead be like Eggman's daughter, to be like some kind of final, like, last survivor resident like abandoned human, I don't know, anything, just get creative, of this island. And maybe instead of the father-daughter dynamic between her and Eggman, she could have been maybe Sonic's friend. And maybe she's like, I don't have friends. Friends are useless. Those are just the byproducts and waste of air and oxygen. As if I would beneath myself to this hedgehog. And then through the course of the story, Sonic ends up like making her happy. It's like, you know what? Maybe I could have friends and open myself up.
Well, and if you
But,
tied
oh,
it
no.
to if the idea is that she's the last survivor, then you could also add an idea of like Sonic, you like because
No.
her whole thing's like you can't escape the island or whatever, or like you're gonna die. So you could actually like add that to like you can't escape the island. I've tried, and everyone I've known has tried, and they aren't here anymore. You know, so it's
Mhm.
like, and then Sonic is able to like prove that it's possible, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can be freed from these islands. I don't know, just anything, you know.
Yeah, like maybe like halfway through the course of the story, then she starts to realize, oh no, I'm starting to feel emotions, and I don't want Sonic to die. He's making me feel things, and I feel happy. I've not felt happy in years. And then at the end of the game, that's when Sage nobly sacrifices her to save Sonic and his friends. And maybe that we have like this kind of sad, like bittersweet note where it's like, I miss you, Sage. Thank you for all you've done. And they kind of look off to the future.
And then,
I
if
don't
you
think
wanted,
it's like
if you wanted to tie it into the space fight, right? She can be like, wow, like for the first time, I've left those islands, and now I can see all that's below. I wish I could have got to explore it, but being here with
Yeah,
you,
she, like,
Sonic, and
sees
saving the
Earth
world,
in the
being able to
distance.
save the world that you run on is worth it. Like Chip, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have to do a tragedy, which the game wants to be moody, so it would probably go for. But yeah.
It feels very much like they tried to just do the Gamma story again, but they rushed and failed to add all the pieces there to make it satisfying.
Yep.
Well, and that's perfect. So I'm glad you said that, because this is what I said earlier when I said Flynn has forgotten how to write a story. So the whole thing with Sage and Eggman is that they grow closer, and then by the end you have this emotional thing of like Eggman seeing her off and being like, goodbye, dear daughter. You know, and like literally the final shot of the game before like all the post-credit stuff is Dr. Eggman looking on the stars falling, on his knees, stands up, he reaches out, and he pulls back and he clenches his fist. Okay, how did we get here? And Flynn just didn't show us, because he doesn't show the progression of Sage and Eggman, or he doesn't show how that progression happens. How does Sage and Eggman grow closer together? Well, he says that off screen she is protecting him, and which we don't see until like the fourth cutscene. And then also in an optional memo, he says that she told a joke he found funny. So yeah, we don't get to see anything of Sage and Eggman growing closer. All we see are like, literally, I checked the cutscenes. There's a scene where he's like, well, get me out of here. I don't want excuses. And then she's like, but my goal is to get you out of here. And then literally the very next scene is her being like, and then the robot hits Sonic again. And they go, ha 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 ha. Oh, Sage, I can't wait till we get home. I'll put you in charge of all of my egg stuff. Oh man, that's really great. I have a home. It's like, and yeah, you're much better than Orbot and Cubot. Orbot and Cubot, I guess they would be like my brothers. Yeah, I guess so. It's like, what? When did we get here?
I would just like to say, just in case there's like one commenter that's like, you're exaggerating. There is like one other, or like maybe two other notes where Eggman's like, you know, maybe I'm starting to feel things for Sage. Maybe she's.
But why?
Hold on. But here's the. Let's just go and say we count that. First off, I'm already deducting points, because if I have to if I have to get the full emotional investment by spending more of my resources in game to complete the story, we already got a massive.
By literally
Also
fishing them out of a
fishing.
lake.
Yes. Yeah. You get important story details through fishing, a wacky side mode that doesn't even connect to the game, like both narratively and gameplay wise.
Yeah.
It's completely disconnected, and as far as I'm aware, unless there's some like hidden game file audio, it's not even in game. Sonic does never mention Big.
Yeah, but what were we gonna say, Lav?
No, that's basically what I was just gonna say. It's like, yeah, no, this is like I'm already taking off points for that in the first place. But even if we end up trying to take that into consideration, I still come back to the question I had before. Why do we need to get, like, of even like, let's just even ignore everything that should have happened before. Let's just take this in a vacuum. Why do we need to have Eggman go through an arc about him having a daughter? Like, let's compare this to Sonic's rival franchise, Mario. Bowser ends up having multiple kids. We mainly focus on Bowser Jr. But the whole thing about his dynamic with Bowser Jr. is that it's mostly played for comedy. Like, hey, I have a son. I'm looking to take over the world. You want to help me out, son? Yeah, Dad. And it's just more about like being the ironic take of like this big beefy bad guy have a son who's also trying to train to be able to take over the world in himself.
And he's like a cutesy little guy.
Yeah, it's basically a mini-me of Bowser. But when it comes to Sage, who ignoring her conflict, ignoring her weird design aesthetics, ignoring the weird implications around her creation, just as is, fine, Eggman's daughter, why do we need this? What does this benefit not only Eggman's story, but more particularly, why do we need to give Eggman this soft side for Sonic? How does giving Eggman this soft side make him a more functional antagonist for Sonic's story?
Like, I'm busy trying to figure out how are they going to follow this up. Like, I'm not going to look at Eggman the same way, in a bad way. Like, okay, so, like, after this game, am I supposed to be like, oh, I sure hope Eggman and Sonic can be friends, because I liked it when they were friends and Sage was there, and, I don't know how we're supposed to follow this up. This feels like continuity breaking almost, in a way.
It is, and this is one of the main criticisms I have for IDW for how it ends up treating Eggman in the first place, is that it wants to have this super dark, drab, depressing story with Eggman being borderline psychopathic and causing as much death and destruction as possible, but still wants to have cartoon logic and still wants Sonic to have the same type of dynamic that more or less Ash has with like Team Rocket, where it's like, or Sonic has with Eggman and Sonic Boom, where it's like, they're kind of a threat, but for the most part, they're harmless. We don't need to deal with them too much. This motherfucker starts apocalypses on a regular basis. Why are we trying to give him a soft side?
Well, and the problem is that if it was all just over the top, then you could get it. Like, it would be one of those things where it's like, haha, Eggman starts apocalypses all the time. Technically, people are dying, but we don't see it. But no, in the comic itself, they address it seriously. So then it's that give and take again. So it's like crazy apocalyptic stuff clashing with like Sonic's weird way of treating it. And the reason that's even worse is because Sonic applies a moral philosophy, so like a real world, like more like way deeper than what I would need in a Sonic game. But then his conclusion is the video game Ash Ketchum, Team Rocket's blasting off again. Like, it makes no sense.
Right. No, and this is something I really wanted to rip into with Flynn during that last interview, where he's trying to apply deontology, where, long story short, without getting too deep, it's basically the idea that everyone should have like certain worldview and philosophies that everyone should follow, that certain rules that everyone should follow to themselves. Like, I will take the basic concept of I shall not kill no matter what, which for the most part I think is a good one. But the problem here is that Flynn takes this to the absurd extent. Like, a lot of people do this with consequentialism and saying like, when people are like, I maximize how good or bad something is depending on the consequences that come from it. And the downside of that is I'm looking to the downside is how much you'll be willing to min-max, how much you'll be willing to sacrifice in order to get that good outcome. Here, Flynn goes with the opposite direction, the biggest problem of deontology that requires people to just be basically self-involved and up their own ass, that they will stick to their rules and principles regardless of the consequences. And while he doesn't do a whole, Eggman might be have Sonic go like, well, yeah, Eggman just got done with a third apocalypse and also just trying to set my friends on fire, but he might turn good one day, who knows? Instead, he doesn't go anything that stupid. But he still tries applying the same logic of Sonic needs to be overly forgiving, overly caring towards the bad guys, regardless of any context. Like, we end up seeing this in the desert island when Sage outright tries to blast Sonic right in the face. Knuckles blocks him. Knuckles blocks the attack, but then Sonic goes like, "Wait, no, we should give her a chance. You don't know, she could be a good guy.
Maybe she just doesn't understand us, and we need to talk to her or whatever." And it's like, this is not the same Sonic who he doesn't even know if Shadow framed him in SA2, but the police think Shadow is Sonic and he got arrested for it. And he's like, hey, you're the one who did this to me. Say something, fake hedgehog. Like, he would never do that in this game.
Yeah, no.
no, definitely.
And I'm all
And
for.
and on that thing, what happened to the CGI cutscene? Where is the Sonic from CGI
for
cutscene?
trailers now. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there's the possibility that either A, it was a different draft, or B, they just thought it was cool. But where is the Sonic that immediately saw Sage and was like, fuck this child, I'm gonna beat the shit out of her. Why is it in this game where you're just like, whoa, jeez, Knuckles, no, I know she's been basically attacking me, and she probably hurt you, but she might just not get it. You gotta be delicate.
Right after she sicked that giant dragon on him too.
Yes, so weird. It's so weird.
Like, I'm all for making Sonic a good boy, but there's a line between being a good boy and just being an abuse apologist, and that's really where Flynn likes writing Sonic. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's the only moment that I thought felt like was a good Sonic moment would just have to be like, because like Sage has asked him like a million times, like, why do you keep fighting? And he's like, 'cause friends. And she's like, why do you keep fighting? I told you, 'cause friends. And yeah. I did think the one scene that was good was when you're on like the 4th tower, I think, and she like comes in and she's like, Sonic, why do you keep doing this? You're dying, because he's like getting corrupted or whatever. And he just at this point stops talking to her. And it's not like he's like can't hear her or whatever. He's just like over it. Like he's just like, of course I'm going to keep moving. Yeah. Like he doesn't need to explain it anymore. Like that's a good scene. That's Sonic showing through his actions what he's or it's a good little moment for him. That's Sonic showing through his actions what he's all about. But other than that, Sonic through this whole game, I'm just like he is definitely a nice boy. He definitely is he definitely cares about your mental health, Amy, Tails, and Knuckles. He is there for you if you ever want to talk. We're good guys. Like if you ever need to talk to me, you can. I'm like, oh my gosh, Sonic, shut up. It's like, yeah. I think the way my friend put it is that it was like, it's as if the story saw Sonic at the end of Sonic and the Black Knight and thought that empathetic side is how Sonic is 24/7.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm not even against the idea of Sonic having good empathy, but it needs, of course not. Yeah, no, I'm totally for him being empathetic, but it needs like something to contrast with. Like it would be a lot better.
Balance. It'd be good if he was, I don't know, cocky and snarky and like would pick on his friends a little bit too, you know, like he usually does.
Well, he's very pulled back in this, which could be a side effect of the voice acting and the direction of that.
No, it's okay. The voice acting is a problem, but that's not really the issue here. One of the problems, and this is one of the reasons why I've actually brought this up a couple of times with a couple of friends of mine. I don't think when it comes to Sonic as a character, while I like Sonic, I like Tails, and I like Amy, these three, until they get some really good reworking, should not be left alone in a group, alone individually, working off as a trio. Because Sonic, for the most part, works best when he's being snarky, sassy, and comedic. But you can't really have him do that with Tails, or especially this blander version of Amy, without just making him look like a douche on a regular basis. So you kind of have to pull him back and just make him a good boy. But when you have just like three well-natured, kind of nice characters, that the only real distinction is Amy can slightly care a bit more and Tails can do exposition dumping, it kind of makes all three of them really bland in the process. Like
there is Knuckles there, but I feel like in this game they're not too snarky. They're more just kind of like
it's very much just teasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's better than the three. But it's better than the other two that we ended up getting. Like I'm not gonna say
agree.
They don't have the best banter, but it's at least something.
Well, I don't want my characters to be like punching each other and saying "fuck you," you're a piece of shit. I hate you, Tails. But I would like them to like be a little bit more like jokey, like, "Hey, love, you're a furry." It's like, lol. It's like, wow, dude, if you watch anime, you're a weeb. It's like, yes, I am. Like, I don't know, just anything, just to give me like a little bit bite. Give me a little bite.
Yeah, no,
shake it up.
No, fuck, I'm gonna bully him on this too. I feel like this is something that Flynn has really had an issue with, especially since Reboot, because he really seems like he tries to avoid having group or character, like really like group interactions as much as possible. Like he really didn't like. I've seen a lot of people criticize Reboot, and a bunch of people, even hardcore Flynn fans, say like, "Oh, the Freedom Fighters are awful." But one of the reasons why the Freedom Fighters were awful, especially in Reboot, was because it really didn't seem like Flynn had any idea about how they were supposed to work off each other, or how to make like their banter or their character interactions come off like, yeah, these guys are friends. Yeah, these guys have a really good understanding of one another. And instead, it's just kind of like we're dumping exposition, and instead, most of their interactions just come off as we're dumping exposition or just explaining the plot. The closest we really get is like one issue with like Sally and Rotor, and even then, it's just kind of it just ends up being like Sally just gives a little exposition about her, talks a little bit about her mom, and then Rotor just does a complete 180 in his what little character he had, and now he's just as bland as the rest.
Well, and again, this was never a big reason this is a problem is that in Reboot they are all stuck in the same space, so they're all there for when exposition needs to happen. They're all there, like they're in the sky place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like they all have to interact with each other, and yet their interactions are pretty much just the same with each other. Whereas like the reason you could get away with that in Pre-Boot is that they didn't live in a base; they lived in a town. And like if Sally wasn't around, it was because she was like hanging out with someone else, or if Bunny was doing something, it was or if Bunny wasn't an issue, it was because she was over here. Like they just lived in a city where like they don't have like a headquarters where they're like making plans. Some of them literally would like go over to the little free thing, and they would just like play video games, and like they would just be over there, be like, oh hey Mighty, hey Tails, what are you doing? Oh, we're working on this. And then like earlier in the issue, it'd be like they're in the city and Sally's just like talking to some of the guards or whatever. So like they lived in a world, and it felt more natural that you could just be like, all right, we're gonna pull Antoine and Sally to the side, or you have the one where Mogul captures them, and Sally's like, is anyone at the base right now? And Amy's like, it's just me. All right, that explains it. That's why Amy and Sally are here, because Bunny and Antoine are just doing something else. Whereas in Reboot now, this game, they're all stuck in the same area, and yet so basically what it does is it emphasizes how little of a group dynamic they have, if that makes sense.
No, it does, because like we don't have like at least the initial character motivation for why they end up ending up in this location in the first place for them to build off of. Which I wouldn't
expect to just roll with it,
right? And I wouldn't even be against that. Like one of my favorite franchises is Digimon, and most of those franchises are about like just taking a bunch of kids and just automatically just throwing them into getting them all isekai and having them have to work off of one another. Yeah. But you can make that work if the stories themselves are meant to be if they're meant to be explicitly about showing how these characters work off of one another. But you need to have a really good idea about who these characters are personally and how to get them to complement and contrast each other. And I don't think that Flynn does it. I do think Flynn knows these characters, but I don't think he's really comfortable having scenes being character driven. Like, again, to go back to IDW for a second, as much as people like Tangle and Whisper, there should be a giant red flag going off for everyone who was ever a fan of that, for the fact that he thought the only way he could get those two to be developed is to give them a mini series. Because if they can't work, if you have to completely stop the story to craft another mini series entirely just to give them any type of character work, how well are they going to work in the story properly? And that's one of Flynn's problems, because he thinks, I know that was kind of a tangent, but I'm bringing it back. Flynn has an issue with thinking that characters and story beats can't be the same thing. And when it comes to this game in particular, it kind of shows, because like when it comes to the Amy stuff, the Knuckles stuff, the Tails stuff, let's be honest, does that tie in with anything? Like, you guys, like, please feel free to disagree with me.
No.
With anything?
No.
The overarching idea could possibly you have to talk because my dog's barking.
Dirt.
What I was going to say is, I think the only purpose of it is essentially just like, here's my character drama. Let's go help out these guys. Here's my character drama, and here's what I want to do. We saved the day of these Cocos. Now they're dead, but now you get a flashback. Bye, Sonic. Go fight the boss. Like that. That's about it. Like.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm back. What I was going to say is that the only overarching thing there really is just the idea of Sonic's the best person ever. Everybody looks up to Sonic, and then at the very end, Sage the whole time is like, "Why do you do this?" He's like, "It's because it's for my friends." And so when he finally gets corrupted, then his friends then come in and they say, "Yes, because he was able to do this for us, we were free, but now we're going to save him." And it's like, when you say it like that, hey, that could be a story. That could be really cool. But the way it's executed is just one, the animation and like the directing is super bad, the voice acting super bad. But just contextually, like again, it doesn't mean much for them to have grown if that growth again, it, like for example, the reason they're coming to help him, right, is that Tails now has the permission from Sonic to like go off on his own and become his own man, and Sonic is like not permission necessarily, but he's like supportive of that. He's like, oh good, Sonic, Sonic supports me, that's why he's cool. Amy, Sonic is there for her, wants her to spread love. Knuckles, Sonic, sees that Sonic is his bro and is there for him, and maybe he could spend more time with his friends. Cool. All right, but none of that manifests in the game.
Right.
So when they come over and they say like, hey, he helped us so much, it's like, but has he though? Because you haven't done any. I haven't seen that change.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if we were just like, first off, I don't even think you would need those arcs in the first place, because as much as I rip into how little chemistry that these four have, especially here, I never thought that they weren't friends. So honestly, we could have just cut away from like literally could have just had them in those bubbles the entire time, and they never interacted or knew anything that was going on with Sonic. And then right when he ended up getting into his full corruption, they ended up getting freed. I could easily have seen them, like, if they found out what they had to do, what they had to do to get rid of his corruption. I easily could have seen all three of them do that in order to try to help him, which I was hoping to try to talk. We can shift in this now. The corruption bit was so fucking pointless. I don't even know.
I feel so bad for all those fans that were like expecting a new.
Oh yeah, we're theorizing. Yeah, about like what it could mean. Yeah,
like, it could have been so easy to just bullshit like a last minute like your friendship corrupted the corruption. Now you get a new ability, and Sonic can now shoot laser beams from his like palms, like something like that. I don't know. Like I feel so bad for all those fans that were expecting something big to come out of that.
And by the way, Love, the way you put that, where you were like they could have just been in the bubbles, that honestly probably like I wouldn't have preferred it in terms of like just keeping them as statues for the whole game. I know you're not saying this, but I'm just jumping off it, saying like if they were just in those bubbles for the whole game, and then the second they get released, they see Sonic, they're like, oh, Sonic, hey, it's you saved us. And then he goes like comatose or whatever, and they're like, Sonic? And then Sage, who maybe has grown close to Sonic's like, he gave everything for you guys. Like they're like, what? He's like, yeah, his spirit's gone or whatever. He's now just like a robot or whatever. Like, no, Sonic. Like, that would feel more impactful because they don't know this is happening. And then they come back and the first thing they see is that Sonic literally gave his life for him, like right in front of their eyes. They're like, no, this can't stand. We're gonna go back so that Sonic can save the day for real. We won't allow this,
Right.
I also just want to like throw in like a quick thought. Like, I'm surprised they didn't like repurpose null space from like the forces. Maybe like recolor it to red and black or something, and just shake it up a bit, and then turn that into a new stage. It feels like they should have done that with all the cyberspacey thing. But I guess cyberspace is that like that void of moving code or whatever it was. Like, I don't know. Just a thought. Not too important.
Oh yeah, no, completely fair. But coming back to the corruption for a second, to be clear, Waffles, that was infinitely a better idea. But honestly, I'm just kind of in the position of like that should have just not been there at all, because it doesn't go.
I don't know what the point of it was. It was just there for like a 2-second moment of like spectacle with the power of friendship moment, and
also to see Sonic suffering during his during idle
animations.
During idle animation, yeah, thank you. Yeah, to see him like idle animation.
Maybe it would have been neat to maybe get like a new attack move through it, or some kind of like story contextual thing where maybe the corruption's trying to like seek through and
maybe Sonic gets stronger, but all the attacks are like these like energy exerting like moves or whatever, and then you see like, oh, Sonic's getting stronger, but like it's taking over or whatever, and like through gameplay you feel that,
maybe like the color effects start going from like blue to a shade of like black and red, and as the game progresses, something like that, and it's like, oh shit, something's happening to him.
Or if we wanted to have like a kind of a cool idea for the Supersonic fights and give them more catharsis, like even more than they are, what if Sonic's corruption it's building up throughout the island, and like by the end of it, he's so tired, and then he goes to one of the bosses, and like throughout the thing, his like energy is starting to deplete. Like he's not as cocky or quippy anymore, but he's putting it up with it, or whatever. And then when he gets to a boss and he goes Sonic, it like deletes the corruption because he's supersonic, and he actually feels better than ever. And he's like, oh, it's time to let off some steam. And then you beat the boss or whatever, Then it would be like there's like a progression. Yeah.
So then, like the moment the supersonic form ends, he kind of like realizes what's about to happen, and then he
and he prepares himself. Yeah.
He like clenches his fist, takes like a deep breath, and it's like, here we go.
Right. Let's keep running. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. On one hand, I'm like, yeah, especially if you want to try to have the corruption be a thing.
Yeah, I'm going for the idea of if you're gonna do it.
yeah, exactly.
Because my problem is I didn't really need that. I don't really like. Considering the fact that it's very easy to divorce Sonic Frontiers from IDW Sonic, and that Sonic I absolutely do want to see suffer something fierce.
But Tangle.
I don't like considering. No, I never saw that dialogue, so I don't care. When it comes to this Sonic, I don't really want to just see him like suffer for no reason and just suffer for it. And I'm like, I'd rather that just. Huh?
If he's gonna suffer, I'd rather him like story contextually do something bad to like deserve it first, Yeah,
or at the very least have it like and like you guys were saying, have it tie in with the mechanics. But considering the fact how I'm gonna be blunt, I actually think that was added in after the fact. Like they came up, like my theory is like the games and the mechanics were already designed well before they brought Flynn into the picture, and then Flynn came in, brought it in. And I'm really not trying to use him as scapegoat here. I'm really just being honest. And I think he kind of got into the story and realized, I need to add in at least a little bit of conflict. So like we have like this twist during the so we have like this personal conflict for Sonic to be dealing with, and he decides to more or less recycle what was going on with Memberberries. But again, here it just kind of has the same problem of it doesn't really mean one, it doesn't mean anything for Sonic's character. Two, I'm just kind of seeing him suffer the entire game for really no benefit or catharsis to me as a player, nor does it benefit his story in any way. And I only really see this here as we need to have a conflict, so let's just come up with something to make it come up with something, even though it doesn't matter anything both to the story or to the gameplay. So
yeah, the only way it would really work, I think, to have the suffering would be if the payoff is like Sage doesn't die, and instead Sage sees all of that. She puts all of her effort into trying to protect these people, and then she gives up on her like nihilism that she can't win, and then she actually like lives, like she survives, and like Sonic's determination to protect his friends, even to the point of dying, inspires her to just try it all, and then she realizes she has so much more power to work with. And then she's able to like live and save the day, or not save the day, but help Sonic. And then there you go. Sonic has inspired someone else. I think you could do that. If you wanted to have the suffering and have it mean something, it would be that it's not that Sonic's suffering and we feel bad for him. It's that Sonic's suffering and like Sage, we're like, man, what a badass,
Yeah.
And then, so that's the only way I could see like the suffering. Like you're saying, what would be the point of it? The point of it would be in the same way that Sonic's character usually is that he doesn't develop, but he wants characters to develop by seeing how cool he is.
Right. Actually, I'm actually glad you kind of brought that up, because that's actually a really good example. I actually think that would have been great. Is that while first off, we should have seen like more impact of his like infection over the course of the game, and that should have been what Sage was complaining to him about, because like she kept going like, he knows that it's never going to succeed, so why does he bother? Why does he continue to keep doing this over and over again? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean that it's ultimately hopeless? Yeah, I'm just seeing like these these Cocos just kind of meeting up and dying, which honestly, I think, depending on what the timeline is, either that they are always going to die, or that they meet up to, or that they're staying alive so they can meet up with them to die. Either way, none of that ties in with what Sage is trying to say. But if we're trying to do this whole thing of like Sage is overcoming her nihilism through Sonic's optimism, then even through actual hardship, because besides the corruption that's barely focused on, it doesn't really tie in anything. So the corruption, her speech doesn't tie in anything. So the corruption should have been more of the focus for what she was talking about, and that's what those two end up having.
Yeah, like if you try to escape the island, if you try to help your friends like I did, then you will be corrupted and destroyed. So it's hopeless. Don't even try. And then Sonic is corrupted, but the friends that he was able to save through his grit give him the ability to keep going, and then that makes her realize, like, oh, that's what I needed. It shouldn't have been me trying to do this all alone. I just need someone who would help me. Sonic, will you help me? And he's like, of course. And then they go do their thing.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, no, that's how you end up using that mechanic properly. But what we got is just he gets sick for 2 islands and then is fine by the end of Island 4, and then we just move on. So I'm just like,
yeah. You mean
to give the game the slightest bit of credit, I will say that the corruption, the lead up to him actually being corrupted, was framed well, which was that Sonic is climbing these 6 repetitive towers, and he is going up and up and up and up and up, as if he's like pushing against, like, you know, the force of gravity, basically. And through each of these things, through powering these things, he is getting more and more corrupt and they do it for each one. So it's like they like make it like drilling into your head if like he touches it, he's like, oh god, fuck. And then he goes to the next one, he's like, okay, gotta keep going. Like, so that was well done. It was just that then when it happened, they were just like, that's not fair. And then they hold hands and they bring Sonic back. And he also doesn't seem to have any reaction to this. That like his friends are like like sacrifice themselves as far as he knows.
Yeah.
By the way, that island is really, really bad, by the way. I actually, so as we're doing this thing right now, I'm playing the game in the background. I tried to go back to that island, see is there any secrets around.
No,
and I kid you not, if you try to explore outside, like away from the towers, there you reach a point where there's a big invisible wall. Like there's this floating like building thing, like this I forgot the shape, sorry, dumbass moment, but there's a floating thing and in the distance, and I'm like, oh cool, is there anything there? Nope, invisible wall. So it's only the Ubisoft islands that you towers that you can explore.
Yeah, that whole island was just the biggest example, not to go off on tangent, but that was just the biggest example of like, you guys couldn't have made it like a snow world. You had to make it the first island again aesthetically and the last island.
Yeah, no, I guess that's what LS Mark meant about the last 2 islands being something else. Well, the 4th.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else story-wise?
No. Well, there is something. We got to talk about the lore that they tried doing. So I want to start with the biggie. With the Chaos Emeralds. Why do they have I get the idea that it's a part of the brand that the Chaos Emeralds are in, that is like the Chaos Emeralds are super important to the brand. First off, I'm still trying to figure out why after like they have been used so many times throughout the entire story, if we're going to consider every game canon now, why are they just now coming to these islands, which is already a big problem. But the bigger issue from a creative perspective, and I don't care who came up with this idea, it deserves criticism. Why does this have to be the Chaos Emeralds over and over again? Why not introduce a new mechanic? Because
introduce a new rock. Like, why not?
Right, because
we already have like the time stones, the soul emeralds in Blaze's dimension, and if you two can help me out, there's like so many more, right?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like, why the Chaos Emeralds? Why did we have to add an unnecessary origin, which doesn't really help out since we know they came from
space.
They came from space, but we don't know like how they were made or if they were natural. Like, it's very vague. It's simultaneously like explained but not, and that it kind of infuriates me as its own thing. But it's just like, why not just make a new rock? They're the red crystals. They came from space and they power up this island, and they're ancient made from technology from their own planet. Like, why did they have to convolute the emeralds a bit?
Oh, hey, Derp, just for actually for both of you here, this is a much smaller version of the problems with the Timeless Child. This is pretty much the exact same problem that they did with the Timeless Child and Doctor Who.
You have to explain this for non-Doctor Who fans.
Oh, sorry. Just to be clear, they decide to add in some, without getting into too much details, they decide to completely retroactively change something that's been in the lore in that show for almost its entire run. It does not only does it make no sense, does it make things even more complicated and convoluted. It actually just raises more questions than it does answers, and actually just makes things worse. So it's
why wouldn't the Chaos Emeralds scatter all the way back to the home planet?
And if they're meant to be power sources, why do only 3 of them keep going back to the cases, but but one of them keeps going back to another boss? 4 of them keep going back to cases, but the other 3 just randomly end up going into mini games.
I don't know. Variety in the gameplay? Go along with it. Don't nitpicking. Blah blah blah.
But I think that deserves to be said. If they're trying to have the lore and be this super deep and actually trying to consider how things are supposed to work, then yeah, you do need to think some of this stuff through. I am willing to give it a pass. It's for game mechanics, but if you're going to go ahead and try retroactively saying yeah, they're from they actually came from another alien race entirely, and that's all that kind of stuff. Now it just brings up a bigger question of why the fuck they work with Sonic and Shadow of all things. And on top of that, why do they come not only does that bring up a question about how it works with those 2, but it just ends up making it weird about how it ends up working in its own game in and of itself. So
I'm still trying to figure out the connection between the Chow. I think you said it yourself, Ian Waffles, about how the Chow, you thought they were just going to be straight up connected, but in this game you can maybe kind of connect it, but it's not really pointed to. It's just you figure it out yourself. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Just, I don't know, game theory. Why couldn't they just have some kind of thing in the game that straight up just either tells you or just gives you a subtle connection? Because you have to just assume the ancients are the ancestors of chaos, but then that's but chaos is a transformed Chow. So wait, how does what? I'm just confused.
Yeah, on a lot of levels, it's just it's too vague to even be interesting, and
Yeah.
it's also too vague to connect to other things. The only thing that seemed cool was the concept of the end, which sounds very comic booky and over the top. But then it's just some evil planet, I guess, and then we kill it. And then we kill it as soon as we find out it exists.
What was that about? I think that's actually one of the main things that people are complaining about with how the ending feels anticlimactic or underwhelming. Suddenly the moon shows up and it's where was the build up to that? It's just so random. This is the game that had 5 years of oh wait, is it more than 5 years or is it 5 years? I'm sorry.
Definitely more than 5 years. They did not start on this right after Force. They did not start on this right after Force.
However many years, this was the game after Forces, you guys. People are eating this shit up. To be fair, I get why, because all of the fan services, non-IDW readers are gonna love the fact that they just get to have more Sonic and I remember Gun. I remember the United Federation. Oh, I remember Dark Gaia. I get it. Yeah, it's fair dues. Me too. I do like fan service, even if it gets kind of excessive in this game. I do like my fair share of fan service, but
yeah, I was gonna say I do want to clarify that I don't have a problem with Memberberries. And obviously for people who don't know what we're saying, it's just when a character will. It's basically the part where Sonic comes down and he's supersonic, and Knuckles goes, "Well, if I were Hyper Knuckles, I would have beaten that sooner." What it is that it has no meaning to anything or anyone, but to make you go, oh, "I remember Super Knuckles." There's no. It wasn't there was a joke set up about them comparing their super forms before. It doesn't add to anything, if that makes sense. Or there's no history that they're referring to that gives it more weight. It's just if I were if this were Archie Sonic and this were the Archie Knuckles, if he had said if I were Hyper Knuckles, I would have gotten that done faster. That would have more meaning because Knuckles has used Hypersonic to fight Sonic, Supersonic. They fought each other. So if he was oh yeah, I would have been better than you, then that would be referring to the fact that they have fought each other before, and he's saying I'm better, nerd, and that would be kind of fun. That would be him referring to a history, like a past they have together. Whereas this is just saying, don't you remember that Hyper Knuckles exists, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get why people would like the Tails, like, oh, I need to be a stronger fox, Sonic. And Sonic's like, you go do that, Tails, etc. for the other characters also. Like, I get that. And even if it, like, didn't hit hard for us, you gotta admit, this game ain't a masterpiece, perfection, flawless, that the people are helming it to be. Like, if you like the game, that's fine. We are not telling you, no, you gotta hate it. Agree with our opinion. We're not saying that. But you gotta agree that this game ain't flawless. You gotta look at it and be like, nope, this
I think saying it's not flawless is a bit of an understatement. This story is a hot mess, from the character arcs to how it tries retconning the lore, to how it even tries handling how it handles its own story beats and themes, to the weird retroactive, weird need to try to make the genocidal maniac sympathetic. And all those things are problems enough, but I get the fact that people want to try liking the fact of, hey, it is making references to its own thing, but I really do not want people, and this is something I'm really trying to ask people to do. I do not want people to give this game a pass just because it made references to the fact of other stuff, because that only really tells Sega, yes, just keep doing this over and over again. You can fuck up however you want, but as long as you just keep making references to the other things I actually like, I'll give you a pass, which means that none of these games can ever stand on their own.
Keep using Green Hill.
Right.
There's also a lot of sentiments about, well, it's not forces, so it's good. There's a lot of those going around as well.
Yeah. And I guess in my sympathetic opinion towards that would be like, guys, you can get better. Please expect better than just than just whoa, they remember old games I liked and they're talking about it. Like I think you should demand more than just referencing. And again, like stuff like in the overworld, just them Sonic being like, oh man, this Rouge, blah 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 blah, or Ozavok or Jet, blah blah blah. That's fine. Like that's cute. But when I feel like the game is only giving you that as far as tying in, like it's doing that in a way that's only tying into or insofar as, hey, don't you remember this? I think my friend brought up a great example, which was the Sonic goes, if you go up to this waterfall, Sonic will say, whoa, this reminds me of the Mystic Ruins.
Yeah.
That is worthless, because what about it reminds him of the Mystic Ruins? What about it stood out to Sonic? Because if we knew that, if he had said, whoa, I haven't seen a waterfall as beautiful as this since the Mystic Ruins, or something like that, then that would tell me something about Sonic and the fact that, oh, he appreciates nature. Oh, that's cool. Or he's comparing it to it in a way of saying like, wow, like this is like even better than that. It's like, oh, he actually liked that waterfall. Oh, that's kind of cute. But him just saying this, I haven't seen a waterfall since the Mystic Ruins or whatever. Sonic sees that this reminds me of the Mystic Ruins. Sonic, what about it just being a waterfall reminds you of this other specific waterfall? You have seen a million waterfalls in the games. What are you talking about?
So not only does it
there's like a post on Twitter right now that's like all of these dialogue pieces that essentially come off like Family Guy bits.
Yep.
And honestly, it kind of does. And it's not that reference is bad. It's rather the execution of the references. They can be done better than they are handled here, I think.
Or to put that more specifically,
with Ian Waffle said.
Right. Like, to put it more specifically, it's one, you need to, if you're going to go ahead and make references to something in particular, it should be tying back into not only what the story is trying to go for, it's done for a specific purpose for something in the story, whether it's for benefiting or expanding on what's going on in the story, or to help give insight to who the characters are. But this game just kind of
or for a joke, like
or for a joke. I will give reference jokes can be funny, but if you're just relying on that over and over again just to appease fans, that's just telling me that you are not. That's all that does is just makes the game come off like it can't stand on its own and has to build off of something else rather than trying to make sure it stands on its own game. It's not
You're relying on other people's material rather than trying to substitute your own kind of
right. And on top of that, I want to criticize this now because I don't want this to lead into worse territory in particular, into future games. For example, I'm meant to bring this back up during the Tails thing. I hate the weird conclusion that they have where Tails basically goes, I want to go ahead and try to be more confident and try to have my own adventures. So the idea is like, in order for him to do that, he has to be separate from Sonic. Which, why put such a weird negative connotation on the idea that these two can't be together and also be confident, self-assertive characters in their own right? Why make it seem like the only way Tails can go off and Tails can be a confident and self-assertive and be useful is by being separated? Why not have them be like an actual group, have them be like a pair or a group that can work off of each other and be supportive of that? Like, I know that sounds a little like, oh, that sounds like something familiar that you're trying to do, but I'm doing that for a reason. I want to try to seem like these characters actually be able to bounce off each other and to get proper development. I don't want to put some weird connotation on the idea that they can't work off of that the only way for these characters to be able to be functional and strong is that they have to be separate from one another. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, absolutely.
So not only do I not like these character arcs because, one, they don't pay off in story. Two, the chances of them ever paying off are slim to absolutely fucking none. In other games, I want them to try to act. I don't want them to put some type of negative connotation on the idea that these characters can't be functional together in a group, or you can't do this stuff together. Which I know, like, the whole idea is like Sonic's trying to go fast and he's always just like trying to book it, but I don't think that necessarily needs to come at the expense of him being able to have relationships and being able to travel along with his friends. Like, so I don't think that has to. Yeah, basically, these characters should not have to be separate from each other in order for them to be at their best.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the overall idea of this game, and where it falls apart is that it just feels like segmented sit down and chat Twitter responses with each character, defending or dissecting what the problems of what the fan base has talked about for these last decade or so, instead of just creating new character moments with these characters and like making them cool again just through being cool again,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, is there anything else overall? Like, do we want to do final thoughts?
Why don't you go first, Paul? I don't have anything else. Derp?
Yeah, I'm good. What about you, Derp?
I think like we said before, I think the gameplay offers like a good palette for maybe future games to kind of grow off of. I think the story is just very flawed, with very little in turn besides like hope for a sequel, because that's all this game really offers. Because they botched. I don't think we really leaned into this, but they really botched the whole Sage and Eggman thing for us. Like, they don't really build up to it, and when they do, it's very short and then just kind of ends. And I didn't mention this before.
It feels like you missed an entire season, and now you're watching like the season finale, and you're like, wait, when?
Exactly.
You're like, wait, when did they become close? Wait, why is this like getting so much time? Wait, is Eggman like a good guy now? Did I miss something? Wait, and your friend's like, no, you didn't miss anything.
Like, it was probably for the best that I got to see that I went out of my way at the start of the game to hear the memo logs, because if I didn't, I probably might have been feeling the same way as others, where it's like, oh, this is so sad, but like with like the context at the start of the game, where it's like, wait, something's going on with Sage and Eggman. I've been spoiled, but where are they gonna go with this? So like with that in knowing, I would then like keep my ear out, an eye out for like little details later on. But then when it comes up and you kind of realize, wait, what are they? Oh, is that? Wait, what? Wait, it's over there. Like, it's so awfully paced and not even like really written at all. Like, it's just hodgepodge together in a mess that doesn't feel narratively satisfying. And I get maybe just people are a lot more easy to please than me, no offense. But like, I did not respond well at all to any of it. Like I said before, I really wanted to like Sage, and I wanted to hope this game was great, but just a lot of the stuff inside of it just didn't work for me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather have characters in the now be cool and awesome. I don't need Tails to be like, Sonic, I've grown and matured and I'm bad. I don't need Tails to just 180 in character direction. I just need him to to whoop butt and maybe get a mech out every now and again, or maybe just stand on his own 2 feet, punch a robot, and be like, I'm cool, and I'm cool now. This is all I wanted. I didn't want a sequel. I didn't want a game after 5 years just to hype up a hypothetical game. I wanted a game that has its own self-contained story, or maybe could have been a sequel to Forces. I for one of those two. I wouldn't mind either, but instead it was just a sequel bait game with very poor self-contained plots, awful lore that I do not like and don't hope comes back. I hope it just kind of is forgotten after this, on top of a really strange dynamic between Eggman and Sage that raises a lot of questions and only makes me just kind of detest what's going on. Like, did we need to see a sympathetic Eggman just after he caused the whole apocalypse and murdered people off screen? Like, no, we didn't. I don't know. No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
It's strange. It's really strange.
Okay. As for me, I think I've said everything I wanted about the story. I think it's pretty awful. I think it's probably the worst story Flynn has written in terms of like this like concise mess. And then also just as far as the gameplay goes, I think that they've got the core mechanics down as far as running around. They just need to now design the levels to be built around using that really excellent movement instead of just using Mario Maker and making little platforming sections that completely ruin the flow and atmosphere of the game. So going forward, I would like them to keep this gameplay style, but just fix the aesthetic, just fix the way that Sonic interacts with the world and make it feel like you're interacting with the world and not above it.
Two more things. The music's actually really good. Even though I think the open world music could have been better, the stage music and the boss music, even if it doesn't gel well with like the tone of the story and the general like vibe of it all, the music's great. Once the soundtrack drops, I am listening to that straight away.
I agree.
Also, Also, I love how none of us realized this until I guess now as I'm explaining it. We never even talked about the fucking jackpot, slot machine thing.
Oh yeah, that thing is awful.
Yeah.
Oh my! What were they thinking? I can't see. Like they put this giant slot machine above you, and then you just have to hear like just over and over. It's like, dude, I just want to play the game. Stop. Get out of my face.
I don't think it's like the worst mechanic of all time, but that absolutely should have been something that we have control over, not just something that just randomly happens. Because I've seen a couple of people talk about that when it happens to them while they're fighting a boss, which I cannot imagine worse timing for that thing.
By the way, as a person that had it happen during a boss fight, you know that shark boss you fight?
Yeah.
As I was fighting the shark boss, the slot machine, whatever the thing, it came out of nowhere and it despawned the shark boss. I had to start all over again. I would have footage of this, but YouTube says my live stream shouldn't be viewable. So just gonna have to take my word for it. Maybe it'll happen to you, and then you'll be annoyed, same as me on your Let's Play.
That's funny.
Okay, so to start, gameplay-wise, I agree with both of you. I actually do think, like I said before, the gameplay is absolutely a good starting point. Just tweak a couple of things, especially around the combat, as well as making sure some of the environments actually feel like they are incorporated into the setting properly, instead of it just being like a bunch of techno stuff on top of a natural landscape, and it should be fine. Story-wise is where I have some massive concerns. I know it seems a little disconnected to bring up the comics, but I brought them up for a reason, because Frontiers has the exact same issue I saw with Reboot, and I've also seen with IDW, where Flynn will spend a lot of time setting things up and saying like, yeah, things will get better later, but also simultaneously writing things into a corner with very little room for anything to be functional or to be usable after the fact. Like when it comes to Tangle and Whisper, we can see what happens in the next issue that they show up in, but we're already like Tangle doesn't have really much of a character arc in the first place in the comics, And right now, it always seems like Whisper, they're already trying to do a 180 on everything that she went through in the first place. And I bring this up in particular because I'm kind of seeing the same problems here where I'm seeing a lot of his weaknesses come up where it's like, I'm just going to use an aesthetic without actually having anything going for it. I'm going to rely on a lot of references instead of actually trying to do anything, a lot of references and just making meta commentary instead of doing anything with the characters. I desperately want to pretend like the madman who's on multiple apocalypses has a soft side and should be seen as more sympathetic, but still wanted to be a murdering psychopath. I've seen these weaknesses before, and it's bad enough when he ends up doing this in the comics. I don't see this going anywhere positive in future games because I've seen what they've been doing in the comics, and I know everyone loves the two new villains that we're dealing with right now, but they have the same issue of just being this really convoluted mess of two villains that don't do anything for the protagonist and make no sense on their own. And I don't want to see these weaknesses to continue into future games. So gameplay wise, I'm all for this continuing. Story wise, at the bare minimum, I need someone there who can actually do a better job of keeping Flynn in check. At worst case scenario, I honestly would rather just have a different writer. I don't really think like Flynn has been at this for about 15 years and he has refused to not only grow as a writer, especially since Reboot, but has refused to honestly kind of even be willing to address a lot of his weaknesses, and instead just kind of either pushes off the responsibility to someone else, or will just try to pretend like that's not, or just completely ignore the criticism in the first place. I have no hope or faith that any of the future games are going to have good stories with him in the credits.
And to anyone that says don't play, guys, with Sonic fans, you want this franchise to be like the best thing. It's not like we can just leave.
You're right. First off, I like it here. Secondly, you can't make me go anywhere. 3, I'm still allowed to criticize. Which is something like a little tiny thing to end on. I hate the weird toxic positivity a lot of this fan base has, where it's like if anyone tries to be critical of anything in the fan base, they have to dogpile on them. Even Flynn had to call out.
Yeah.
Who was like, "Oh, Digital Trends put out a bad review. Let's go ahead and dogpile them, you guys." And even Flynn had to jump in and go like, "No, what the fuck are you doing?" And
even Sam's doing this now. Like Sam Procrastination made like a quote retweet saying like they made a bad review or something. Which is not nice.
No, so I get the idea that Sonic has been made into too much of a punching bag. I agree that some people are way too mean-spirited when it comes to, can be a little unfair when it comes to the criticism. But I think trying to say any criticism towards the game that is not plastered with a bunch of, in my opinion, or a bunch of like, well, you're right to that has to be plastered with a bunch of like conditional, so you don't have to take it too seriously. I don't think it's fair to just like just consider all criticism to be bad unless it's kissing your ass half the fucking time. So yeah, that's the other thing. I'm just like, can we not do that anymore, guys? That'd be nice.
Like nobody please leave with the impression that we're telling you to change your opinion and hate the game. Like nobody here is saying that. We're just like throwing our thoughts out there. And if you agree, that's cool, neat. But like we're not telling you to hate the game. Like you're validated to your own opinion. If you like it, that's awesome. That means you paid for a game full price and got something out of it. I paid for a game full price and didn't enjoy it.
Right. And if you have and honestly, if you disagree, that's completely fine too. In fact, I'm not going to be a coward. Feel free to come to the comment section and feel free to completely leave whatever your thoughts are or any type of criticism that you have for this video. I invite it. So yeah, no, like I think we should just be. I don't want to cower out on this. Be willing to admit. I think we should just be willing to admit that there is room for improvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, I agree. Post in the comments what you think. I would love to see any discussions, and at the very least, if we can all get either more appreciation for the series or a better product out of it or better fan works, getting more fans content from people learning like, oh, we should do this or this to maybe improve the series. Then yeah, that's a net positive as far as I can tell. So, but yeah, do you guys have anything else, or should I close this out?
No, that's it.
Should we like drop a like? What do you do, Lav? Where can we find you?
God. I am pretty active on Twitter, trying to also get back to being active a little bit on Tumblr. And I'm kind of working on a little something that have a particular idea that I hope I can get released by the end of the year. But we'll see. We'll see when I end up ultimately putting announcements out for that. But yeah, no, you can find me at pretty much anything at Laviaray. Derp?
I am the one with the least to advertise, but you can find me at my Twitter at 2derpader that I'm sure Lav will drop a link in the description. Come at me and probably disagree with my opinions.
And Nami and Waffles, you could find me on the YouTube channel by the same name. I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really post anything. And yeah, I make YouTube videos once in a blue moon. I recently released a Kingdom Hearts 2 video, if that's interesting to you. Made videos on My Hero Academia, K-On! What's that?
Yeah, watch his. Yeah, I was gonna say go watch his videos, especially Kingdom Hearts.
Yes.
Do it.
Oh well, thank you. But yeah, that's find me, and I think that's all from us. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I guess maybe we'll see you for another IDW discussion. Or at least me and Lavi Ray, I'm sure.
Yes.
So, yeah.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.